All right, cool. Fucking A, yeah, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So,
Oh
as
yeah.
always, getting started right away. When's the first time you saw this one?
So funny thing, I saw the remake with Jessica Biel before I saw the original because, like, again, you know, I'm 32, being exposed to this stuff, like, when I was younger, I'm just like, I don't have any knowledge of like the original or anything, and I just see, on a streaming platform, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I'm like, oh, I've heard of that. Let me watch that. And that remake was phenomenal. But the first time I've seen the original was probably 6 months after that remake, and so I did it kind of backwards. But dude, when I first saw the original, I was like, this kicks ass. Like, this is so much better than the remake, even though they had, low budget. It was 1974. It was totally different time. I love the original best out of all of them. Yeah, so that I saw it after the remake, which is kind of funny. But yeah, what about you?
Really quick to get on the remake. The remake is like a surprising, like, I like the remake a lot. Usually remakes are kind of whatever, but I thought they did really good. Jessica Biel is a babe. Like,
Smoke show.
dude, in that movie, it's ridiculous. It's like it's unreal. Girls like that do not exist anymore, or ever, I guess, but except for Jessica Biel. So yeah, shit. I saw this one first, before I saw the remake. This one I saw, it's pretty much one of the movies that I always talk about when I first got into horror, like right before COVID. I watched The Shining first, and then I became obsessed with that, and I watched it every night for a week straight. And then after that, I was like, "Oh, well, let's move on to another one." And just the name Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I was like, "Okay, I gotta watch that one because it's the best name. It's the best named horror movie. There's not a cooler name than the Texas Chainsaw Massacre." So I knew I had to watch it. Um, I didn't know anything about it. I like going into movies like that where you don't know anything about it except for like its reputation. That's kind of how it was with The Shining for me too. All I knew was that there was a movie called The Texas Chainsaw Massacre and that people say it's one of the best movies of all time. And I'm getting into horror, so I'm gonna watch it. So I watched it. Obviously, I loved it right away. I'm really good at I feel like some people aren't always good at putting themselves. You have to put yourself into the mindset of a person in the 70s to watch this, because if you watch it as like some fucking entitled brat from today's era, I'm not trying to talk shit, I'm just being a dick. But you might think it's kind of bland. It's literally just about some kids that drive out to the back roads and get killed. It's the first movie where you got the final girl, really, where it's literally just a very cut and dry, pick off the kids one at a time. So I feel like if you can't put yourself in that mindset of, oh, this was the first movie to do that, then you might not get it. I could see some kids today not really able to put themselves into that mentality. But I've always been pretty good at that. Same with movies like The Exorcist. Kids today might think The Exorcist is cheesy, but if you can think like a person in the 70s, you don't have Google to go check all these things. And that applies to this too. Like we were talking about before we started, everybody thought this movie was real because of that text crawl in the beginning. And, they talked about how it was all based off real stories. And there was no Google to, you couldn't pull out your phone in the theater and check. So you were just taking this movie for its word. And, yeah, just crazy. I consider this the greatest horror movie ever made. I think I just think it's a perfect horror movie. Like there's nothing I would change about it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
What do you Sorry,
So,
what?
sorry to comment real quick before I lose the thought. Did you know that you said the name is so amazing, which I agree, it, like, pulls you right in. But did you know, like, they had like a bunch of different names that they wanted to use, and the closest one they were going to use was head cheese. Head cheese. Like, okay, what the fuck? Like, I don't know, like, what they were thinking with that. But I mean, I understand when the hitchhiker gets in and he's talking about making head cheese and stuff, like that's where they got it from. But you can't even compare the two. Like, they definitely did a good job on picking the right title.
Yeah, it'd be a totally different America today if it was head cheese. There's two of the silliest like what ifs to me are one is head cheese. What if they called it head cheese? And then two is one of Kurt Cobain's original names for Nirvana was Poo Poo Platter. And think about a world where you're listening to the radio and here smells like Teen Spirit by Poo Poo Platter, and oh, here's the next installment in the Head Cheese franchise. It'd just be fucking terrible.
So
But
true.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre is perfect. I have a few opening notes that I'll rant about, so you should go first. Do you have any, like, what do you got for general
Uh,
thoughts?
You probably have more than me because you're doing the plot. But now I just have, the thing with the name. Just wanted to comment on the amazing cast that they, picked. It's just amazing. The guy that plays Drayton Sawyer, I always get the last name wrong. Jim Sido, just perfect pick for like a to play like a southern redneck, like just backwoods dude, and kind of like mentally fucked up. Just the whole casting was amazing. Those are really, I mean, that's just the comments I have on it. But you probably got more than I do on the opening end of it and whatnot.
Yeah, I got a bit here. Let me let me prepare for this one. So the first note I had, I kind of already got to, where I put, I think this is a perfect horror film. I said there's nothing I would change about it. Just the appearance of the movie. I wrote just the way it looks on the screen. Like even if the TV was on mute, I would still love this movie. It just looks perfect. I wish this is how more horror movies looked. I always joke that I kind of wish like cameras stopped evolving in the 70s because it's just the perfect, even beyond this, you think like, like The Exorcist and like Black Christmas, like, there's just kind of a grit to the appearance of these 70s movies, and this movie captured it the best. A big one I wrote was, I think the fact that there's no real music in this entire movie, aside from the radio in the hitchhiker scene, there's no music in this movie. It's just kind of noises and percussive sounds, and I don't think that's talked about enough. It's definitely something I've heard talked about, like YouTubers and podcasters do talk about it, but I think it should be talked about more. I put a movie that pulls off having no music is so incredibly rare. In fact, not only does this movie pull off not having music, but I think it's enhanced by its lack of music. It helps bring you into this world. A lot of people talk about how this film looks real. It looks like you're watching something you're not supposed to be watching. And I think it's the lack of music that contributes to that. I jokingly imagine there's probably tons of like artsy fartsy directors who want to make movies with no music for like artistic reasons, but there's probably always somebody on their team that's like, hey, look, let's be real here for a minute. Like, a movie without music is like an outlandish idea today. Like, it's not a common thing. Really, music is like a really crucial part of almost all movies. Like we just talked about Easy Rider. That movie is not that movie without the music it has. But
Yeah,
then you got Texas Chainsaw, no music at all. It's pretty crazy.
it's funny you bring that up because all the comments that I was reading about like these old people that seen it in theaters, the older people that are now, they're like, oh, I remember 74. I seen this came out. All of them loved the fact that it had no music, and they said that that was the coolest part about it. Like when Kirk first goes into the house and we first see Leatherface for the first time, there's no, like rant, rant, rant. There's no horror movie sound, nothing. It's just him getting bludgeoned with a hammer and screaming. There's absolutely no music. And I read probably 20 plus comments that were like, dude, when this came out in the theater, that's what made it so fucking cool and unique. Like you said, a lot of people would probably disagree, but it should have had a soundtrack. Like, no. The reason why it was so realistic looking and feeling is because of that, and I think that's what makes it super unique. So good note there for sure.
Yeah, it's a total like opposite day thing, and then I also you think about Halloween, the original, without that soundtrack that, John Carpenter wrote, that movie is not the same at all. But Texas Chainsaw Massacre,
Totally different vibe for sure, but
yeah,
yeah,
I think if you add music to this movie, it becomes a worse movie. Like it's better.
it
With
would be corny as fuck for sure. Yeah.
so then a little side note on that, I wrote, although there is no music, there's a lot of noises that were recorded for the movie. A lot of noisy percussive stuff goes on here. I read a little bit about I guess Toby Hooper gathered up a bunch of weird stuff like children's musical toys, like cymbals and xylophones and like shakers, and they were just banging on them, and that's what they recorded for a lot of the sounds or the noises. Um, okay, this is kind of a long one because this is This is actually something I want to write like an actual video about. I think I've talked about it before. I wrote this movie is a perfect example of how social commentary should be done in movies. I don't want to go into a whole side tangent about the state of cinema today, but all of today's movie writers and directors, I think, could learn a lot of serious shit from this movie. This movie's packed full of social commentary relative to the time it was made. It touches on how animals are treated in the meatpacking industry. It touches on like the economy of those like small rural towns where the technology came in to cut labor costs and everybody lost their jobs. And so everyone moves away and the towns are just kind of left to die. But this movie doesn't shove any of that in your face. It kind of just presents it to you and then gives you the option to pick it up or leave it there. So I wrote, there's two ways you can watch this movie. I can get home after a long day at work. I can take off my head and set it on my nightstand, and I can put on the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and just watch this perfect horror story play out as I try to forget about the day. Or maybe it's a Saturday and I want to stay up late and really dig into some shit. I can put on the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and I can put my thinking cap on and I can really engage with all the topics that it presents in this like metaphorical way. One other thing I think it does well in the social commentary department is that it doesn't necessarily tell you how you're supposed to feel about its subjects. So, like movies today that get way too into the social commentary, they pretty much beat you over the head telling you how you're supposed to feel about the topics, and they tell you all about how the writer feels and the director. You can watch these movies and pretty much tell, okay, I know how this whole cast and crew feels about it, and I know how they want me to feel about it. But Texas Chainsaw, it kind of just presents you with the stuff and then it just leaves you be. So to me, the biggest moral question I think of when I think of this movie is it okay that we kill animals this way? So the ways that Leatherface kills the protagonists are obviously ways you'd see animals being killed in a slaughterhouse. And Leatherface is almost shown to be a sympathetic character. You kind of start feeling bad for him at some points in the movie. So it's not like the movie is saying, look at this guy, he's big and evil, you should hate him, and this is how animals die, and it's all bad. It's more so kind of just saying, like, here's this thing, and you can do what you want with it. You know, you can leave it, you can think about it, you can feel this way, you can feel that way. I think it does the social commentary like perfectly. You know, it's not the main thing is that it doesn't beat you over the head with it. It's not too redundant. It's not obnoxious. It's just it's perfectly there or it's perfectly not there if you don't want to deal with it.
Right.
Um I wrote the sentence somehow it just worked perfectly. Basically sums up this entire movie. I wrote the little thing about by all accounts it was a small crew of unknown people who loved film and they just ran out into the hot Texas back roads with some small amount of money and just made a fucking movie and somehow it just worked perfectly. My last note before the plot is kind of a part two of that last one about how it just worked out perfectly. I used to consider The Shining the greatest horror film of all time. And of course, it is still undeniably one of the greatest horror films ever made. But once I became obsessed with like how movies are made and like the production of these movies, I ended up thinking that the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is the greatest horror film of all time because the story of its production is just like so perfectly the spirit of horror films. Like horror has always been like the cheap, dirty, and sleazy outcast that never gets the big budget that it deserves. And this movie is just it's perfect for that. It's you know it's cheap and sleazy and it's dirty and it makes it all work perfectly.
Right.
So yeah, those were my pre-plot notes. I wanted to mention the social commentary thing a lot. I think this movie, yeah, it does social commentary perfectly. In movies today, you know, really need to look. I won't go too deep, but the people that made the Barbie movie, they should have fucking studied the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And I know that sounds funny, but they really should have because this movie tackles its social commentary perfectly. And
Like you said, that's all good points. Like you said, it has so many underlying things, like the meatpacking industry, like you said, the kind of the hitchhiker culture, like the trust of somebody that they pick up that guy and he winds they're trying to be sweet, yeah, good kids, and they wind up getting totally fucked because of it. And like you said, you almost feel bad for Leatherface. Like the fact that there's no opinion on what you should feel with any of the characters, but you almost feel bad for Leatherface in a lot of these scenes because you could tell he's just a inbred kind of retarded guy. Yeah, no, those were all good points for sure, and the grittiness of it, that's what made it feel so fucking real. Like, I think if Stanley Kubrick put the movie together, it wouldn't be as good. And take that with a grain of salt, what I'm saying, because he would have made it way more like professional looking, and it shouldn't have been. The way it is as perfect as it was. And it's funny, you talked about the 70s, like the camera quality and the grittiness. You see people now on Instagram, they're using those filters for things to create that vibe, to create that, or they're going and buying these like Polaroid cameras that are new, but they give off that grainy like 70s vibe. That's what made it so fucking awesome. And I wonder if any of those guys that made that movie thought it was going to be as successful as it was, because I mean, I don't know. I mean, but you watch it, you're like, holy shit, this is artwork. But I just wonder if, when they were putting it together, they were like, oh, this is a masterpiece. Probably not, because no director normally thinks that until, they get the reception from the viewers. But put together so well. And again, to touch back on the casting, I mean, everybody they cast was so fucking great. And I was reading also that Gunnar Hansen wasn't the first pick for Leatherface. I didn't know that. There was some other guy and some shit went down, and he was like the second pick. The dude's huge and fucking, his body movements, everything is perfect. So it's funny how some of those things just fall into place on their own. Yeah, fucking phenomenal.
Yeah, Gunnar Hansen was perfect. You made a second comment about the kind of, we almost start to feel bad for Leatherface. So then that reminded me, I have no notes about this part, but what do you think about, I've seen some arguments that Leatherface technically did nothing. Texas stand your, the Texas stand your ground law. They all kind of intruded on his property. None of the kids, yeah, Kirk walked straight into their house. Pam walked straight into their house. Jerry walked straight into the house. Franklin, Franklin dies somewhere in the middle of the woods. I don't know if he's on their property or not, but at least 3 of the kids walked right into his house. Like, so I've seen arguments to say like, oh, Leatherface, at least the first 3 kids, like, they went into his house. Like,
that is such an interesting thought, because I have never even went there with that. Like, originally you're like, this psychotic family, like, had it out for these guys to begin with. But I mean, like, you're kind of right. Like, I live in a stand your ground state, and someone comes in your house, it's fair game. Yeah, that's very interesting. That's such an interesting thought. Like, I would love to hear other people's opinion on that. That is such a interesting thought for sure. Yeah, poor Franklin, man. He had it fucking beat from the beginning. And he's all feeling sorry for himself, and he wheels himself out of the van right in those reeds when he's that, again, an awesome scene where there's like, leaves and branches, and he's trying to get through, and you see this fucking monster in your face. Like, this movie is one of those movies that I put myself in their shoes, and it felt like realistic to do so. I was like, holy shit, imagine if I was, in their shoes. And it felt real, which is what I think a great horror movie is all about. Put yourself in that position.
There's a note that I put a little bit into the plot when Franklin is pissing on the side of the road. And it's just a quick little, like, I guess, question that I probably will never find the answer to. Franklin being in a wheelchair, I think, is like a super interesting creative choice. Like, I'd be very curious to know why Toby Hooper, or I think it was Kim Henkel that helped him write it. I'd be wondering, like, why they chose to, let's put this motherfucker in a wheelchair. Like, you just don't think about that. You certainly don't see it anymore.
They even use it in the opening, the opening explanation. They're like, and they use the word invalid, which is funny because it's the 70s, and they're like, her invalid brother Franklin. Yeah, like, why? I don't know why, but I will say it was interesting because you feel sorry for Franklin. At least I do. Even when he went to go take a piss, he kind of was like, if you remember, he was looking back, and they're all kind of laughing at him. Like, not laughing at him, but they're like smirking because he's having trouble, and you feel like, fuck, dude, this poor guy just needs to take a piss. Something we take for granted, and this guy's so embarrassed about it. I don't know why they used that, but it was a nice touch for sure. And And he's a short-lived character too in the movie, so he dies off quick.
Franklin helped me realize that horror fans are kind of assholes. Horror fans often talk about, like you'll be just in any other horror movie, you'll get like there'll be a teenage girl and she's kind of a bitch in the movie. So they'll be like, oh yeah, we were all glad that she died. I think, well,
Yeah.
that's kind of mean, but everybody hates Franklin because Franklin, he complains the whole time and he's kind of a bitch and he throws a fit half. But I'm like, dude, the motherfucker's in a wheelchair in the hot Texas backroads. His friends left him in the van to go party in some fucking house. Like, yeah, you're right. I feel bad for this guy. And horror fans, these heartless motherfuckers, they're like, oh, this guy complained the whole movie. And no, yeah, I felt bad for Franklin. I thought,
He was the best hearted one out of all of them too, because not to jump too ahead, but when they pick up the hitchhiker and everyone's like, this guy's a fucking weirdo, like they're all in the corner, he's trying to like gain common ground with him. He's like, I like head cheese. I think head cheese is cool. Like, and he's trying to like be nice to this guy when all these other guys are like, fuck. I mean, I don't blame them. They're like, this guy's a weirdo. But Franklin tries so hard to like be a good guy, and it just shows he's got a good heart. And like you said, horror fans are assholes. They're like, kill this guy off,
that is true. I've also read, and there really is so much to this movie before we even get into the plot. I've read some kind of like comments and theories about how Franklin and the hitchhiker are connected in some weird way. So they both blow raspberries. When the hitchhiker gets kicked out of the van, he sits there blowing raspberries, and when they get to the Franklin's dad's house, Franklin sits downstairs blowing raspberries up at the gang. Franklin's also kind of obsessed with the hitchhiker. He never stops talking about him the whole movie. There's another thing I think that people brought up, but yeah, so that's funny to point out that he is the only one that's nice to him in the van. He does make that comment. He's like, "Oh, I think we just picked up Dracula," but then he goes on to be the only one to really have a conversation with him and like try to talk to him. And so yeah, I've read some theories about that Franklin and the hitchhiker are connected in some kind of weird way.
They're both outcasts in a way.
Yeah, they both do seem to be outcasts. And the groups they're both with seem to hate them. Like the hitchhiker, well, the oldest brother, the cook, and what I called him the old man because in the credits his name is the old man. He wasn't Drayton until part two. The old man, the cook / Drayton, is kind of a dick to everybody. Like, he beats on Leatherface and the hitchhiker, but he really beats on the hitchhiker. Like, he's really mean to him. And then the group of kids is kind of really mean to Franklin throughout the whole movie. So yeah, they both kind of are the outcasts,
Right.
even among their own groups. All right, I'm gonna get into it. So right off the bat, this was my famous paragraph just about one single text crawl. I wrote, we start off with a text crawl and John Larroquette telling us what we're about to see. He basically tells us we're about to see some fucked up shit. In my notes, I write in parentheses that's pretty much like my take on what's going on, so I won't specify that every time, but when I start talking about things that I love, that's usually my opinions about this. So I love when horror films do this. It makes me think of the classic horror movies like Frankenstein. Like in Frankenstein in the very beginning where the man in a suit steps out from behind the curtain and he lets the audience know they're in for a wild ride. What you are about to see may shock you and frighten you. To me, this is kind of like the 70s version of that. And horror movies have kind of done this for a long time. They always start off with this little intro, whether it's a text crawl that's supposed to make it look like a documentary, or it's a guy in a suit in the 1930s letting you know that this may give you a heart attack because that's how audiences were back then. I wrote, to me, it helps me get in the mood. It almost helps me clear my mind a little bit. Like I kind of readjust in my seat and get comfortable while this text crawl is going on. I think this was one of the first movies that, yeah, I think this was one of the first movies that tried to kind of tell the audience that this movie is a real story. And which goes on to be kind of a cool trope in horror. There's movies like Cannibal Holocaust and the Blair Witch Project and Paranormal Activity that everybody thought was like kind of real when it came out, and then the internet and iPhones came along and fucked that whole thing up.
Right.
But I think Paranormal Activity was the last one to really pull it off. It was like 2000. I don't remember what year Paranormal Activity came out, but I remember when I was in school, Paranormal Activity came out. And my friends and I were like, "Oh yeah, this shit's real. Like this is real footage of like a fucking supernatural situation in a house." And then after that, it never happened again. Not to get too off topic, but Blair Witch Project I think was the most genius with the way they would send the studio or whoever the crew would send out people to movie theaters, and before you walked into the theater to see that movie, they would hand out missing persons flyers of the actors in the movie.
Yeah, dude, I told my ex-girlfriend that was real, knowing it was fake. And this is like, it's on DVD. It's just, we're talking about like 10, 15 years later. And she's like, no, I mean, she believed it to her core. And that's something to make somebody believe that in today's day and age. Fucking bravo to the directors of that movie.
It's funny. I dated a girl too that I at one point convinced. I don't remember what horror movie it was, and I don't think I fully convinced her, but I think she more so was kind of like, "Oh, is this real?" Or she's like, "Oh, it looks real." And I remember being like, "Dude, if this was real, it would be in a fucking folder in the FBI's possession. Like, it would not be in theaters for us to go enjoy watching people die." Like,
dude, even the end of, not to get off topic, but even the end of the Jessica Biel remake of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, that ending scene looks like real police footage. Like when they're like, "This is the last known scene of the man they call Leatherface." Like, if someone's naive, you could really pull it off and be like, "This is real." That was pretty fucking cool.
I think some people back then did think there were stories going around of like people were calling police stations asking if they could get the rest of that footage because they thought it was real and like the police must have it. Which to me, there's no greater compliment to your horror movie if people think it's real.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
Next little plot point I wrote, we're told that it's August 18th, 1973, so the events of this movie take place 1 year prior to its release. The actual movie starts now, and we can only hear the sound of someone digging. We hear the sound of a shovel hitting dirt over a black screen. Then we start hearing an old camera and seeing flash pictures of human body parts. I wrote, "We're not wasting time here. We're getting right into this shit." Our screen finally lights up, and we're met with a shot of what looks like a decomposing body tied to a statue. I can never really tell what this is because it looks so gruesome and it's kind of messy. So on Wikipedia, it says it's a rotting corpse and other body parts tied to a monument. So there's at least one dead body, in that weird little fucking contraption thing that's tied to the statue. I don't know, so maybe that's it. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. What I see is one dead body tied to a statue. And then we hear a news broadcast talking about what we're seeing, and it also mentions a second body found in a ditch nearby, and at least a dozen empty coffins. So it's a grave robber. And the broadcast voice also mentions that this has been going on over a period of time. Again, I wrote, there's really not a second wasted in this movie. Everything you watch is relevant, and it just starts immediately. Like, you just get right into the shit. We start off with a grave robbing and a vandalism. Now we jump to our opening credits. I think I've heard that the graphics behind the credits are supposed to look like sunspots. If that's true, I think it's another great detail that kind of contributes to the immersion into the hot Texas backroads that this story takes place in. Along with the credits, we hear this compilation of radio news broadcasts, and they're all tragic and upsetting, which kind of drag you into the sense of dread that you feel throughout this movie. So I thought that was cool. I wrote one line in between all my notes that just says "dead armadillo in the road."
Yeah, that shot's cool.
It's great. I guess there's a documentary that's on YouTube you should check out sometime. It's about the making of this movie, and it's got a lot of the cast and crew. And I guess the armadillo is a real armadillo that somebody from the crew, he went through like a taxidermy phase, and he taxidermied this. And then Toby Hooper was like, "Oh, let me use your fucking taxidermy armadillo." I guess when they showed up to shoot on the first day, somebody in the crew was saying that I think the original script called for a dead dog in the middle of the road. And then when they showed up to when they showed up to the fucking back roads in Texas, because that's what the set was, there very luckily was an entire ass dead horse in the road.
Eh.
And they were like, dude, this is our lucky day. Like, shoot this motherfucker. This is going to be the start of the movie. But the cast and crew were kind of too pussy to do it. They're like, oh, it smells bad. It looks gross. I don't want to get near that fucking dead horse. So they passed up on the dead horse and they went with the dead armadillo. But the armadillo is cool because that's fucking Texas. I imagine armadillo roadkill in Texas is a dime a dozen.
Dude, that's even here in South Carolina, they are everywhere dead. And it's funny the way they put it upside down is exactly how I guess that's just how I don't know if that's how they die or that's how they wind up dead, but they're upside down all over the highways, dude. It's like
Are those things mean or are they nice? Because they look really cool.
never seen one alive. I've only seen them dead. They're dead all over the place in the South. Yeah.
Oh, that's hilarious. All right, I wrote here we meet our protagonists as they pull over to the side of the road in their van so Franklin can take a road piss into a coffee can. Franklin is, of course, in a wheelchair. Kirk has to get up. No, Kirk has to set up this kind of ghetto rigged ramp out of two pieces of wood so Franklin can roll down out of the van. Here's where I put that note. I've always thought it was interesting that Franklin was in a wheelchair. Like, it's an interesting creative choice. I'd be curious to know why they chose to put this character in a wheelchair. Semi-truck driver drives by and whips up a load. It looks like dirt or mud. It flies into Franklin and sends him falling down a hill. After Kirk runs down to help Franklin, we cut back to the kids inside the van and they're back on the road. Franklin is complaining about the heat while Pam is reading an astrology book. My own note, I wrote, I don't know anything about astrology, but I've read that apparently everything Pam talks about foreshadows the movie. Like Saturn being in retrograde is apparently a bad sign. So I guess if you're into astrology, you would hear what she says here and you'd go, oh, something bad's about to happen. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And then I wrote, just to get it out of the way, because there's not a lot of characters anyway, our main protagonists are Franklin, his sister Sally, her boyfriend Jerry, who drives the van, and Pam and Kirk, who are also a couple. So I'm just going to refer to everybody as names from now on. The three bad guys, everyone knows Leatherface. I call him the old man in this, just because that's what he is in the credits here. And then I just call him the hitchhiker. I know in part 2, they go on to become Drayton and Nubbins. And then
that's what it says here. Jim Sadow, old man. But in Wikipedia, it says Drayton Sawyer. But like you said, we don't see his name till the second one.
Yeah. Part 2, we start getting more names.
Awesome casting on him. I love that guy. It's great.
He was perfect. There's nobody better than although I will say, Arlie Ermy in the 2003 remake did
for a more modern one, yeah. But this dude for the two originals, on point. And he's so fucking like corny but funny and like scary at the same time. But then we find out he doesn't even kill anybody because he can't muster up doing it, which is funny.
He has all the best lines. I wrote them all down too, like the "look what your brother did to the door," and he has all the classic lines in this movie.
Sex or the Saw.
Astrology. No, I just named the characters. Yeah. So we see the van pulling up to a cemetery, and we learn that the group is here because Sally and Franklin's grandfather is buried in the cemetery that was hit by the grave robber we learned about in the opening scene. They want to see if he's been messed with at all. While Sally is checking on the grave, Franklin listens to a town drunk ramble about how bad shit goes down in this town. We cut back to inside the van on the road again, where Sally assures Franklin that their grandfather's grave was untouched. While driving, the group passes by a slaughterhouse, prompting Franklin to talk about how slaughterhouses used to kill cows by bashing them in the head with a sledgehammer, but now they've advanced to using big air guns to shoot a bolt into their skull and then retract it. The group have a quick back and forth about the morality of this practice and eating meat before they notice a hitchhiker on the side of the road. The kids stop and pick up this hitchhiker. In the movie, the hitchhiker, I put that here. In the movie, the hitchhiker never gets a name. He's just credited as the hitchhiker, so that's what I'm going to call him throughout this whole video. We see pretty quickly that this guy is kind of weird. The conversation goes right back to the slaughterhouse, and we learn that the hitchhiker's family have all worked in the slaughterhouse. The hitchhiker tells Franklin that the new air guns have been putting workers out of work, and then he shows him some gruesome pictures he has of cows that he's killed. Franklin picks at his fingernails with a pocket knife until the hitchhiker takes it from him and cuts the palm of his own hand. I had to write, this is the real deal. Like, he dragged that shit deep across his whole palm. It's like one of the, to me, it's like one of the I don't want to say worst parts of the movie, but I cringe when I look at this motherfucker just like digging this pocket knife into his hand. He seems to enjoy this, but the group is obviously freaked out. He pulls out his own knife and tries to show the group, but they tell him to put it away. Now he pulls out the oldest camera you've ever seen and takes a picture of Franklin. The group continues to be weirded out. This is definitely one of those scenes that, like, you just have to watch. Like, hearing somebody describe the scene is kind of like, what the fuck?
Describe it. And just real quick, the guy Edwin Neal who plays it, phenomenal job. Like, he really seems like he's got mental problems. Like, in that scene, like you'd believe that. But I think it's funny. Any horror convention I've ever went to, like, this guy is at. Like, this guy has such a following for just this like 5 to 10 minute scene. He's got like the biggest following. I don't know if you knew that. It's hilarious. Like people are like in love with this dude just for that 10-minute scene. That's how like cool it was.
Horror fans, I've noticed, are really cool to their favorite actors. So like I notice horror fans, if some actor does one movie in the 80s or even the 70s, that's all he needs. Every time he goes to a convention, he will have a line out the fucking door.
Yeah.
Whereas like in mainstream Hollywood, if Brad Pitt's last successful movie was Fight Club, the world would know him as a hack. He'd be like a hack. His career is over. He'd be kind of a bum. He's a has-been. But horror, dude, if you do one thing in the fucking 70s, they will love you forever. So I like that.
This guy, like, I think it was the same time I met Bill Moseley. These guys were doing, I mean, Bill Moseley's way bigger name, but both of them were doing like pictures for like $70 to $80 a piece. People were lined up, like, you know, his signature was just Ed Neal, the hitchhiker. Like, I'm like, this dude had a 10-minute scene, which it was an awesome scene, but I don't know if I'd follow the guy across the country to get his autograph, but you know.
Yeah, no, he kills it in this fucking movie. The hitchhiker insists they take him to his house because it's so close, but then the group insists he walk the rest of the way since apparently it's so close. So they kind of fire back on that one. The hitchhiker persists and even offers the group dinner at his house. Once the photo of Franklin finishes, once the photo finishes developing or whatever you call it, I don't know what it's called when it does, well, you know, one of those cameras you.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. He tries to charge Franklin $2 for it. Kirk tells the hitchhiker to keep the picture and tells Franklin, do not pay him $2. I think this part's like hilarious. This must be like a, you know, because $2 was probably a lot more back then. Like nowadays, I'd fart out $2 just because it's funny that this weird guy took my picture. Like, but back then he's like, no, do not give him the fucking money. Take the picture. Like, it's a really big deal to these guys.
He's like, it's a good picture. You pay me now.
It's definitely a scene that you just have to watch, or else it's never going to be described perfectly well to you. So the hitchhiker pulls out a sheet of aluminum foil and some gunpowder. He sets the picture on the foil and pours some gunpowder onto it, and then proceeds to light it on fire. As the group is rattled by this guy's weird shit, he gets his knife back out, grabs Franklin's arm, and cuts him. The group finally pulls over and kicks this dude out of the van, and as the van is pulling off, the hitchhiker uses his bloody hand and marks the side of the van, unbeknownst to the kids inside the van. This is kind of one of those scenes I think about, to go back to House of a Thousand Corpses, when Otis brings down the pickled baby in the jar. Like, would you have waited this long to kick this guy out of the van?
No, I wouldn't have. First off, I wouldn't have picked him up in the first place. But even if I did, he would have been out of there a long time. When he started talking about, you got to kill a cow with a sledge. It's much better that way. I'd be like, motherfucker, get out of my truck now. You know, I think they were more in shock. And then you got Franklin trying to be his friend. He's like, yeah, I like head cheese. Like, motherfucker, you and the dude in the wheelchair can get the fuck out of here because I I ain't playing with that.
Yeah, I think when he cuts his own hand, that would have at the very least that would have been my like, okay, this is, you know,
Yeah, and he likes it. He loves it. He's like, ah.
yeah. I'd be like, dude, you got to get the fuck out of here. But no, they put up with a lot of his shit for for a good. I mean, he when he sets that, but dude, look, this guy's lit a fire in the back of your van, like,
Dude, and the scene where it's POV and he's going "Bleh," and he's smearing the blood. He's kicking the van with the side of his sneakers and he's just going nuts. Fucking awesome scene, dude. It's going crazy. So cool.
yeah, he does a great job in that role as that character. So, back on the road, Pam is reading more astrology and continues telling everyone that they're gonna have a real shitty day. I guess everything she tells everyone is basically you're gonna have a bad day. So our group of kids pull up to a gas station. I wrote, side note, this weird looking redheaded balding gas station attendant that you see when you pull up. I love this guy. I wrote, you never really see people like this in movies nowadays. Like today, even the creepy characters in movies are 10 times more attractive than we are. But this guy is like a legitimate, like he looks like a fucking weirdo. I mean, like, but it was probably what a guy would look like working at a gas station in the middle of the back roads in Texas. Whereas, today you'd get fucking Tom Cruise playing the gas station at like,
That's kind of like a Michael Berryman-esque looking type dude. Like a dude that's totally freaky looking, that's without any makeup or anything. You know.
yeah, you really never get those guys. I watch a lot of 70s like exploit, all the fucking Claudia Jennings movies and fucking truck stop women, and it seems like that the 70s low budget is where you see these like weird looking motherfuckers that are like they're always balding. They look like there's something wrong with them, but you're not sure. You don't want to be a dick about it and be like, this guy looks, like something, but like you never see those nowadays.
Total backwoods redneck inbred looking dude.
Yeah, and they've always got these like gas station jobs or truck stop jobs or yeah, no, it's definitely like a relic of the 70s, and a little bit into the early 80s too. I think by the time we get to the late 80s, that's when everybody's in movies is pretty much like attractive. You're not going to see a movie with too many ugly motherfuckers, or there's exceptions like Rob Zombie. Obviously, will put Michael Berryman in his movie, and
Hills Have Eyes remake too. The remake, the gas station attendant. If you remember the Hills Have Eyes, that dude's freaky looking, and he's not wearing makeup or anything. He's just a real fucking backwoods looking dude with a little nub cigar in his mouth.
that's cool. I haven't seen the remake. I that gives me a little more faith in it.
Oh, you got to see that. We got to do a review on that.
Yeah, hell yeah, hell yeah. We should do both.
Oh yeah,
and then we should do both of this. Fuck it. I mean, we'll go through a lot of this shit.
yeah, it's awesome.
All right. Gas station. The girls get out of the van as Kirk and Jerry try to get gas. The owner of the gas station informs them that they don't have any gas. A little side note, a little social commentary here. The gas shortage of the 70s in America. I thought that was a cool little thing to put in there. Franklin asks the owner if he knows where a certain house is. This part, I had to write this note. The owner tells Franklin that they shouldn't be messing around in this area. Compare this to Captain Spaulding, how when the kids come along, Spaulding and the old man try to kind of tell the kids to go away. Don't fuck around out here. Which, yeah, is interesting because it's like, obviously these people want these kids to fuck around out here so they can, do whatever they're going to do with them. Franklin tells him it's his house and that his father owns it. So Jerry goes into the gas station to ask the owner if there's any other gas stations around, and we get a conversation between Kirk and Franklin in the van. Franklin is still freaked out about the hitchhiker, and even though everyone else has moved on, Franklin seems caught up on what happened. Jerry returns with some barbecue chicken that he bought from the owner. I think it's chicken. I don't remember if he said it's chicken, but I know it's barbecue. And obviously, I'm pretty sure the actual, it's probably hinted at that it's actually human meat,
Yeah, it was barbecue. It was like sausage links and weird ass shit. Because I remember they like pan the camera to that. Yeah.
Yeah, Jerry returns with the barbecue. The group pulls back. No, what the fuck? Sorry. The group pile back into the van to find the nearest gas station. Sally notices the blood that the hitchhiker smeared on the van and mentions it to everyone, but at this point, no one seems to care. The group leaves the gas station. Franklin continues voicing his concerns about the situation with the hitchhiker. Then we get to the group arrives at the house that Franklin and Sally's father own, or did own. I think he still owns it. While getting out of the van, the group notices the blood smear on the van finally. Franklin is again the most freaked out by it. He ponders the possibility of the hitchhiker trying to follow the group. Everyone else has quickly gone inside the house and left Franklin outside. The house is old and falling apart. Franklin is mad that everyone left him outside. Kirk and Pam leave to find a swimming hole nearby. Franklin by himself downstairs finds what looks to me like a pile of animal bones and bird feathers. I can't really tell all too well. It looks like a pile of fucked up shit, basically. And after finding this pile, he looks up to see animal bones hanging from a doorway. And I don't even know that they're actually animal bones, but they're bones hanging from this doorway. Later, we're following Kirk and Pam as they make their way to the nearby swimming hole, only to learn that all the water has dried up. Kirk hears a generator off in the distance and sees a farmhouse. He assumes whoever lives in this farmhouse will have gas that the group can use for the van. So he and Pam start making their way to the farmhouse where Kirk plans to barter for some gas. Pam doesn't seem too excited about this idea. Kirk wanders around the property looking for someone who lives in the house. Finally, they reach the front door, and on the porch, Kirk finds a tooth that he places in Pam's hand, which grosses her out, makes her mad, and causing her to walk away from the porch and sit on a swing that happens to be a short distance away from the porch. Kirk knocks on the door, hoping someone answers, and he knocks so aggressively that the door opens on its own. So he decides to walk into the house, and here we meet motherfucking Leatherface. Leatherface comes out from nowhere and bashes Kirk in the head with a hammer. Kirk falls to the floor, and his body convulses. Leatherface hits him in the head again, stopping the convulsions and likely killing Kirk.
Dude, that slide door, like fucking where he slides the door open. Actually, in that scene, I think that the door's already open. So when he hits him, and no music, just a thud, the dude's fucking convulsing on the ground, and he pulls him, and then he slides that door. Like, that, dude, if I could have put myself in a theater in the 70s and seen that, fucking mind-blowing. That is such a cool scene.
The door sliding is like iconic horror at this point for sure. After this kill, I had to write this kind of a long note of my own opinion on Kirk being the first one to die. I really liked. So I wrote, I love Kirk being the first to die because if I had to judge just based on looks, I would say Kirk is the most capable of the group. And to jump ahead a little bit, even Franklin says this. There's a scene where Franklin and Sally are by themselves at the van, and Franklin is talking about the hitchhiker following them again. And Franklin makes a comment where he says he's probably afraid Kirk will kill him, which to me shows that at least Franklin would also consider that Kirk is the most capable. Kirk is like the defender of the group. If some wild shit ever popped off, they would rely on Kirk to do the heavy lifting. So, I put it's really dark and depressing that Franklin thinks Kirk would kill the hitchhiker while Kirk is actually already dead. And then Kirk being the first to die, to me, it's kind of like the movie showing you like these kids are all fucked. Like we've now killed the toughest guy in the group. You know, no offense to Jerry, but he looks like he's on his way to a fucking disco. Franklin's in a wheelchair. The two other girls, even if you wanted to talk about like fucking girls like Ronda Rousey, these girls are tiny. Like Kirk is, not that Kirk's like the toughest looking motherfucker, but yeah, I would pick Kirk. If I had to pick any of these guys for my fighting partner to fight somebody else, it'd be Kirk.
He was the most capable for sure. He had, he got taken out real quick. It kind of ruined their chances of survival right there.
Yeah. I feel like that I would hope that was like intentional. Let's, take out this guy first. It kind of makes the rest of the movie you feel kind of hopeless after that. You're like, well, fuck, they took out he had his shirt unbuttoned at that point. You're like, okay, they took out the guy in the best shape. Like, what are we going to do now?
Jerry looks like he's on his way to a disco.
Dude, he does. So Pam doesn't really know what's going on because she's been sitting on this swing, and it's far away and it's far enough away from the house that she can't really see or hear what's going on. So we finally or she finally starts calling out to Kirk, wondering where he is. She gets up and starts walking toward the house. And here we get this iconic shot of her ass in the red shorts. Everyone knows it's a great shot. My take, I wrote, to me, it's one of the shots that I really don't know why it looks so cool. It just does. I think maybe the color of the red shorts with the blue sky in the background, and
Ass fucking huge.
I was gonna say her ass is of course great too. Let's
Yeah,
let's let's
dude,
let's let's call it how it is.
for sure. I agree. But to note on the color contrast, there's a lot of really good use of color in this movie. Like, I don't want to jump ahead too far, but her eyes, Sally's eyes, with the green, like they show like a close up of it. There's like a really good use of color, which is ironic because the cameras back then didn't pick up color well. So kudos to them for that.
Yeah. I think these guys definitely knew what they were doing with cameras. As far as what they had, they knew how to use it well. I know there's a big story about this shot of the camera that follows her butt. Like, the producer of the film told. So I guess the way it works, movies they do storyboards where it kind of looks like a comic version before they actually go out and shoot it.
Right.
So they have their set shots for the day. You're gonna get this shot, that shot, this shot, that shot. And that butt shot was not one of the planned shots. But somehow while shooting this idea came up and Toby Hooper was like, "That's a great idea. I want to do that." And one of the producers was like, "We don't have to film to do that. If you fuck this up, we're going to run out of film for the day." And he was going to get fired basically. So the movie would have might have not happened. But Toby Hooper was so persistent uh, on doing the shot because he knew it looked like a really good shot. And I guess it was a big deal because, back in the day, you had to pay for the film. So you only buy a certain amount of film for each shooting day. So, like, if they fuck up on this butt shot, then they run out of film for the day and then they're fucked. They're running.
Right.
So I
Yeah.
like I like that little story about him fighting for the shot of Pam's butt because it's one of the best shots in the movie.
Hell yeah.
And I also have to point out the backless shirt that she's wearing, which I guess was intentional because at the scene where they put her on the meat hook is supposed to, kind of shows she has no back on her shirt, so there's really no layer of protection. But to me, it pays off more here because it looks like she's wearing no shirt from the back. I'm being a man at this point. This is how I'm
Oh,
now looking at the scene.
girls are hot as hell, and these old horror movies, dude, they're great, and they do it for a reason, and they're never wearing bras, so their nipples are just like, bam. I'm like, hell yeah, dude.
The 70s girls were total babes, that's for sure.
Sure.
All right, so yeah, the iconic shot of her ass in the red shorts. She sees the front door open and she walks inside to look for Kirk. While walking around the house, she stumbles and falls into a room that's covered in feathers. And she looks around and sees a chicken in a small cage that's hanging from the ceiling. Bones, some animal and some human. This weird chair that's made out of human bones with a skull on the top of it. There's a human skull hanging. To me, this is my favorite one. The human skull that's hanging, and it looks like there's like an animal's horn, like stuffed through its mouth. Again, I wrote this is really one of those scenes where you just have to go watch it because nobody can explain this very well.
Where they get their Ed Gein influence too, is the chairs made out of human bones. Like if you read like the background, like they obviously wanted it to reflect Ed Gein, but it kind of they didn't do a great job because none of the shit that Leatherface did was like Ed Gein like type shit, except for the bones being made out of bowls and stuff like that. Like that scene kind of shows that, like the furniture made out of skulls or whatever, but loosely based on Ed Gein.
Yeah, this is definitely the most inside the house. I think
Right.
yeah, is the most influence from Ed Gein. After looking around a bit, it seems like the weight of the situation has finally hit Pam, and she leaves the room in a panic. All right, so as she gets out of the room, Leatherface appears, She sees this motherfucker wearing a person's face and runs for the front door. Just as she makes it out the door, Leatherface catches her and starts carrying her back inside the house as she kicks and screams. So, this scene right here where he's dragging her back into the house, I had to write my own, I wrote, "The scene is, like, really visceral to me," because it's literally just a young, small woman being completely overpowered by, like, a hulking animal of a man. Like, there's no, like, reading between any lines, there's no metaphor, uh, there's no Hollywood choreography, like, this is, like, what you imagine when you think of, like, these situations where, like, a dude just overpowers a girl and just, like, takes her, there's nothing fancy about it. This is, like, fucking nightmare. Like, you don't wanna think about this happening to your sister, to your girlfriend, like, it's just a big dude picking up a fucking small girl and taking her back inside, and she's kicking and screaming the whole way, and it doesn't matter.
And he grabs her from the like right under her tits. And because that's interesting to me, because like he's so strong that it doesn't matter where he grabs her, he's gonna be overpowering her. And that kicking, all fours go kicking, like that's such an iconic scene. Like they make movie posters about that scene because it's so wild. And you can see the fear in her face is just fucking real. I mean, imagine being face to face with someone like that. I'm a fucking grown ass man. I'm 300 pounds, and I'd be like, dude, I'd be crying, for sure.
Well, you mean, like, face to face with, like,
Face to face to face.
yeah. Yeah, no, it's exactly how you imagine, like, when you read those, like, true crime stories of, like, a man abducting a woman, and the woman's, like, 5'3" and weighs 100 pounds, and, the dude's fucking, it's ridiculous, like, it's exactly how you imagine this shit goes down in real life. So I liked that. I liked that it wasn't fancy. There was no, like, choreography. She kicks and screams, no effect on him, like Pokemon. Like, it is not very effective. Like, Leatherface is not bothered by her kicking and screaming. Leatherface carries her into the room, or carries her into a room and hangs her from a meat hook. He lifts her up, and the hook goes into her back. So he kind of lifts her up and sets her down on it.
Brutal.
Yeah. And so she's hanging there screaming and crying, and now she sees Kirk lay it out on the table in front of her, and he's obviously dead. Leatherface proceeds to cut Kirk up with his chainsaw right in front of Pam. Another note I had to write was I love how none of the kids ever actually like know that their friends are dead until it's too late. Like Pam walked into the house thinking she was gonna find Kirk like alive. And then I know she's technically alive and seeing him dead, but she's technically, she's pretty much dead. She's hanging on a fucking meat hook. Like they never understand the danger that they're in until they're face to face with Leatherface. Later on, Jerry goes into the house. Jerry thinks he's gonna find Kirk and Pam, and within 2 seconds, Leatherface kills him. Franklin is in the woods. He hears a noise within 2 seconds. Leatherface, like, usually horror movies like introduce the villains to the protagonists and kind of, they understand that their friends are dying around them, or they understand what these kids never know shit. They're just kind of wandering around 1 second and then they're fucking dead.
They never were able to think as a group about like what they're gonna do, or it was all individual thinking, and that makes it unique for a horror movie.
That is a good point. Yeah, they never get to devise like a plan for there's no game plan. It's always just, oh, we got to go find, I'm going to go find our friends really quick. I'll be right back. Okay, they're gone. I'm going to go. Yeah, there's never a fucking, yeah, I never thought about that either. So yeah, I finished it. They never really know they're in a life or death situation until seconds before they die. So now Kirk is getting cut up. Pam is on the meat hook. We cut back to Jerry, Sally, and Franklin. They're back at the van and they're waiting for Kirk and Pam. They think Kirk and Pam are just swimming still. So Franklin is still talking about the hitchhiker, and he's worried about the possibility that the hitchhiker is following them. So Jerry decides he's going to go find them, Kirk and Pam. He starts walking toward the swimming hole where they think they're swimming. This is where Franklin talks about the hitchhiker following them and then makes that comment about how he's probably afraid that Kirk will kill him, which, yeah, is depressing considering now Kirk is like in multiple pieces and, probably getting cooked.
Hmm.
We follow Jerry as he finds the house that Kirk and Pam are in. He knocks on the door looking for them. After getting no answer, he notices that Kirk's blanket is sitting on the porch. So he knows Kirk is in there. He thinks it's some kind of prank, and he walks into the house. He walks into the meat hook room, and he hears noises coming from a meat freezer. I think it's a meat freezer, some kind of deep freezer.
The chest freezer, yeah.
And he opens it to find Pam. She's not all the way dead just yet, but as soon as he finds her, Leatherface comes barging in and bashes his head with a hammer. This scene, I think, also backs up my point that Kirk was the most capable. So when Kirk died, he just died, but Jerry kind of screams like a girl right before he gets hit with the hammer. So Jerry's not winning any fights against Leatherface. Obviously, Kirk's not either, but I'd still at least want Kirk on my side before I take Disco Jerry over here.
With Jerry.
He he slams Pam back into the freezer and he shuts it. So now we get this kind of sympathetic scene where Leatherface is visibly panicked. He's paranoid. He seems to be looking around the house, wondering where these kids are coming from. It's here that we realize Leatherface seems to be a scared animal who believes that he's protecting his home from these kids who are invading his house, basically. He runs to a window and he looks around outside, and then he sits down looking scared and anxious. He's like patting his face and doing all this weird shit. So now we cut forward a little bit and it's nighttime. Franklin and Sally are still waiting for the rest of the group. They've got the van headlights on and they're honking the horn. They're yelling for Jerry. Franklin starts suggesting that they should get in the van and head to a gas station, but Sally wants to go out and look for their friends. Franklin the whole time is like the only one that really is like, I think some shit's going wrong here. Like we should head back. I feel like Sally probably is like worried, but she's trying to tough it out and be like, no, I'm going to go find Jerry. But Franklin seems to be the one that's like, bro, let's get the fuck out of here.
And I feel like because it's Franklin, they're not taking him seriously. It's like, oh, it's just Franklin being Franklin again, being like, the invalid brother that nobody, and it's like he understood what was going on.
Yeah. It makes me feel worse for Franklin. I'm like, dude, if Sally would have listened to Franklin, they'd be
alive.
Yeah.
So I mean, she was dating the one guy, right?
Yeah, Jerry was her boyfriend.
So yeah, that throws a whole wrench into it because I would hope that the tables were turned, like they would be coming looking for me or I'd be looking for them if it's your boyfriend or girlfriend.
Yeah, that's definitely I think that has a lot to do with why. Because when Sally goes looking for Jerry, she's yelling his name the whole time. She never yells for Kirk or Pam. She keeps yelling for Jerry.
She's like, they could be dead, I don't care, but make sure he's alive.
Right. Yeah, Franklin wants to drive back to a gas station. Sally wants to go look for their friends. Franklin discovers that Jerry took the keys to the van, and now he starts to panic. So after a little bit of like brother sister arguing, Sally and Franklin both head into the dark to look for their friends. Now, wandering around in the dark woods, Franklin and Sally see a house in the distance, which is Leatherface's house that they just don't know yet. Just as Franklin thinks he hears something, Leatherface appears in the darkness and hacks Franklin up with his chainsaw. This is the only actual death by chainsaw in the movie. Everyone likes to joke about that because it's called Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but this is the only like death by chainsaw.
Yeah, he sticks it right in his gut, like right in the chair.
Yeah, he must have got him, like his insides must have come out like down the middle.
Right. And another great use of color with the filming is that the blue moon, like the blue iridescent moon against the leaves and the trees, had a really like cool haunting effect to it.
Yeah, after it's nighttime, like the cinematography's always been great, but once it's nighttime, like dude, the shots are just wild, like for the whole rest of the movie. Yeah, only actual death by chainsaw. Sally screams while watching her brother being murdered by chainsaw right in front of her. And I wrote, now we're off to the fucking races. Every chase scene from here on out with Leatherface and Sally is just classic fucking horror. Um, we watch Sally struggle to run through these sections of like dry brush and dead bushes and trees, and she gets cut up pretty good throughout the chase. Leatherface obviously has no problem because he's just clearing paths with his chainsaw, like he was like born for this moment.
Hmm.
Um, I put my favorite thing about this whole chase is the sound. Again, because there's no music. It's literally just Sally screaming and Leatherface's chainsaw rumbling for just like an ungodly it's like uncomfortable how long you just hear a chainsaw and a girl screaming. Just
And the fact that they used a real chainsaw. It was none of this CGI bullshit. They used a real 2-cycle fucking chainsaw, and you can see the smoke coming off of it. He's just revving the thing. So sick.
yeah, yeah, no, it looks really I mean it's obviously real. This is what I in my last job, I sharpened fucking chains for these motherfuckers. So now when I watch movies with chainsaws, I can see. I mean, everybody can see if they pay attention, but I can see too easily now. Like, a lot of movies now they use a chainsaw, but they don't put the chain on it,
Right,
and,
right.
and like people that don't know any better don't notice. But now it sticks out to me like a sore thumb. So I'm like, okay, cool. This is he's using a real chainsaw here.
Realistic, yeah.
So yeah, the sound, just the fact that it's literally just Sally screaming, a chainsaw rumbling. During this first portion of the chase, Sally finds the house, and she obviously doesn't know that it's Leatherface's house yet. So she runs inside, trying to find someone to help her. She runs up into like a small upstairs room. It's kind of like an attic, and she finds what looks to be two dead old people sitting in the rocking chairs. We'll learn a little bit more about them later. Leatherface catches up to her, and her only option is to jump out of a second-story window without even opening the window. So she throws herself through the glass down 2 stories. Um, Leatherface sees this, and he runs back downstairs and out the house and continues chasing her. This part, one, Sally's my favorite final girl because one, I think she's the most realistic. Like everyone likes to talk about these like badass girls in horror, which are cool. I love Sydney from Scream. But Sally to me is the most realistic. Like, dude, I'm not even a girl, and if Leatherface approaches me, I'm running and I'm screaming. Like that's what's going on. I'm
Right.
I'm not fighting this motherfucker. I'm not setting up any of these like elaborate Home Alone, 80s horror movie traps to catch. Dude, I'm running and I'm screaming. Like that's what. Maybe I'll have an opportunity somewhere to do something, but that's most likely what's going to happen. And then she is badass because she jumps out fucking 2-story windows through glass and gets up and continues running, which I think is very true to like adrenaline and
And her screams, I mean, as an actress, her screams are like really like from the heart deep screams. Like they're not just like, like they're not like Sherry Moon Zombie fucking, corny screams. They're like really like gut wrenching fucking screams. Like kudos to her. And as an actress, I don't know what else she's even done. I have her.
I got you on a real funny one. She did the movie fuck, what's it called? I think it's just called oh, you're gonna think it's hilarious. I've never seen it because I can't take it seriously just because of the stuff that I know about it. Um the movie Manson from 1973.
I've never seen that.
Yeah, it's a movie that's based on the Manson story and the trial. It's no, I'm totally wrong. It's not this one. Shit, what's it called?
I have her Wikipedia here.
Helter Skelter from 1976. That's the one. It's a
Yeah.
it's a Hollywood movie. It's stupid because it's like the Hollywood version of the Manson story. But she plays Linda Kasabian in the movie Helter Skelter from 1976.
Okay.
So that's to me the funniest thing. You can find like there's a video of that movie does this little cheesy monologue where the Manson character is on the stand at the trial and Linda Kasabian is watching, and it's Marilyn Burns. And it's funny because her voice is so recognizable. It sounds like Sally from Texas Chainsaw. But yeah, I don't know what else she did. She was in she had like a small, like kind of a little for fun role in a later Texas Chainsaw movie, I think. But
That's what I see here. The Return of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, 95. She was in a comedy, Brewster McCloud. Helter Skelter, not many things. And what's weird is she died fairly young. She was 65, and it says her brother found her dead in her Houston, Texas home, and the cause of death was never specified.
Oh yeah, that's weird.
That is weird.
Yeah, this is definitely, I think, still her biggest role, like to this day.
Yeah, that's right. When you pull up the Wikipedia, it just says best known for Sally Hardesty and Toby Hooper's classic horror film Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and it established her as a quote unquote scream queen and a catalyst of the final girl trope.
She, to me, I would. I'm trying to think of the first final girl. I think she is. I think this movie came out before Black Christmas. I know same year, but just whichever one of those came first, I would say is the first final girl. But yeah, no, her scream is great. Like there's really, you're hard pressed to find a better screamer in any of these horror movies with, girls screaming and just nonstop. I actually timed it, which I'll get to here in a second. Here, let me see. Finally, Sally finds the gas station from the beginning of the movie, and then here I actually timed it. From the second Sally starts running to the second she walks into the gas station and Leatherface kind of disappears, it's around 5 minutes and 30 seconds. It's a whole 5.5 minutes of just fucking Sally screaming and Leatherface's chainsaw revving.
Yeah, you know how many takes they must have had too, so her voice is probably ripped up after that.
Oh yeah, and then there's a second chase scene, like later on. The first chase scene is kind of cut into two parts because she goes into the house and wanders around for a second, and there are parts in that chase scene too where Leatherface gets like uncomfortably close to her, like
right under. I think he even hits her in the back a little bit.
Well, I think what happens is it looks like he could have reached out, and I know there's a reason for that. They talk about how what happened in the actual production of the movie was that Gunnar Hansen was obviously way faster than her, just because he's a bigger, stronger dude, so he runs faster. So he kept catching up to her too fast. And so he'd have to kind of clumsily back off or like do something stupid to, that's why you see him a lot of the times he's like stopping and cutting down branches and shit. He said he was doing that because he's like, oh, I'm too close to her. I need to back off.
Yeah.
In my mind, I can kind of explain it to where, because there's a lot of shots where it looks like if he would have just reached the chainsaw out, he would have hit her. But to me, I think, well, Leatherface isn't the smartest guy. So he's not understanding, like, if I reach out, I'll hit her. So he kind of just because he's always got the chainsaw, like, right here. So, yeah, he gets really close to her. Like, it's, she was, like, inches away from taking that fucking chainsaw to the back. Let me see. Yeah, Sally runs inside the gas station, and it seems like Leatherface basically disappears. The gas station owner, who we met earlier, and here's where I wrote in the credits, he's known as the Old Man. So from here on out, I'm going to call him the Old Man. The Old Man sits Sally down on the couch and tells her that he'll drive her to the nearest phone. He pulls his truck up to the front of the gas station, and once he walks back into the gas station, he's carrying a burlap sack and some rope. And Sally very quickly learns that this guy has bad intentions. I don't know why. I think it's hilarious that this guy just, oh yeah, let me go get my truck. I'll drive you down to wherever. And then he just fucking walks in with a bag and a rope. Like,
yeah. And when he's like trying to convince her, he's like, yo, listen here now, girl. You'll be good now. It's so fucking funny.
Like she's going to be like, okay, yeah, you're right. Let me just tie me up real quick.
Yeah. Doesn't he beat her with a broom too? It's fucking a push broom, and he's going, ah. It's fucking hilarious, dude. Like, oh my. How can you not laugh at that? Come on. Okay now, girl. Relax, girl.
The broom overpowering her with the knife is definitely some shit that if they did it today, they'd try to make it like Sally would like win for a little bit. In this movie, it's what is it? She grabs a knife nearby for protection. The Old Man literally just picks up a broom and Sally lands no hits on him. He just straight walks, there was no reason for her to even pick up the knife. Just no effect. Again, like Pokemon, it was not very effective. Broom overpowers knife when in the hands of the Old Man. So yeah, he overpowers her. He ties her up. He stuffs the grossest looking towel in her mouth as a gag. That scene always gets me. I guess it was just a towel they found on set one day and they were like, fuck it, use it. And it just looks so gross. He puts the burlap sack over her head before putting her into his truck on the floor on the passenger side. My note here is I love the part when he runs back into the gas station to turn off the lights, and he comes back out and he says, "I had to lock up and get the lights. The cost of electricity is enough to drive a man out of business."
Yeah, he's always he's such a cheap motherfucker. He's always trying to save $1, trying to save a penny.
It's
I like when he's driving her. He's hitting her with the broomstick on the floor. Or like it's fucking great. And he's because like we learned that he hasn't killed anybody and he can't kill people, but he still is a sadistic fuck, and he's getting off on hitting her and her pain. You know.
I love the electricity. The cost is enough to drive a man out of it. It's still relevant today. Like today, I still make sure to turn my fucking lights off because
Yeah, you're paying out your ass for sure.
you know I don't want to be living on the streets because I leave my light on while I'm out kidnapping a woman.
And you live in California where rent is extravagant anyway, so
Everything's extravagant, dude. Your taxes here are extravagant. Um, shoot, where was I? Here we go. Oh, I put that note down. While he's driving, Sally is crying underneath the burlap sack on the floor, and the old man is continuously jabbing her with the stick that he's got with him. It looks like it's not like a stick, but it just looks like a wooden, like a,
yeah.
like a rod or a baton. And yeah, he's just poking at her, and he's just laughing. We see that he's driving to the house where Leatherface lives, so we can assume this is his house too. And walking along the dirt road is the hitchhiker. The old man gets out of the truck and angrily beats the hitchhiker with the stick and reprimands him for the grave robbings we learned about in the beginning of the movie. This scene, cinematography-wise, also great. It's lit by the headlights of the truck, and the old man's just beating the hitchhiker in the headlights. It just looks great. Shoot, what was I thinking about that scene? Rob Zombie does this. I'll get to it in Halloween 2. The scene where Michael Myers stabs the farmers in the middle of the field. It's lit by the headlights of the truck, and it's like the exact same shot. I love when movies do that. If they just use a nighttime shot with a car's headlights, it's perfect. So yeah, the hitchhiker is the guy who committed these grave robbings we learned about in the beginning of the movie. The old man gets back into the truck and continues driving, and the hitchhiker jumps into the back of the truck. It's obvious that they both live in this house too. When they pull up to the house, the old man yells that the hitchhiker isn't supposed to leave his brother alone, his brother being Leatherface, so we learn this is all one big family. The hitchhiker gets Sally out of the truck and drags her inside. I had to write another classic line here is I missed it earlier when Leatherface chainsaw through the door of the house, and the old man sees it and yells, "Look what your brother did to the door." It's like classic. Yeah, just,
the house is in shambles. It's a shithole. And he's like, "Look what your brother did to the door." They're just so whacked the fuck out. It's like contradicting everything, and that's fucking great.
I never even thought about that. How the whole house is a shithole, anyways.
Yeah, they care about it. Yeah, it's so funny.
Inside the house now, the hitchhiker begins tying Sally to a chair at the dining room table, while the old man yells at Leatherface, asking if he let any of the kids escape. I had to note now Leatherface is now wearing a different outfit. Earlier, he was wearing like a butcher's apron and kind of just like a plain face. Now he's wearing a cook apron. He looks like a fucking wife. I think they call it like people say it's like the housemaking outfit. Like this is what he wears when he's being motherly around the house. So
wearing face too.
Yeah, he's got the woman's curly wig, and then he's got like makeup and blush on his.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, super, super creepy looking. Like if I came face to face with this guy, I would just take me out. Like, please make it quick. Like,
right.
I want nothing to do with this. Leatherface is clearly visibly afraid of the old man, and he explains that he didn't let any of the kids get away, speaking only in like grunts and muttering, along with some physical gestures like pointing to things. The old man is still angry about the door, though, and he beats Leatherface with the stick that he's been carrying around. The old man instructs the hitchhiker to get Grandpa from upstairs. And as that's going on, the old man tells Sally that they're going to make her some dinner. Which, how weird would that be? Just like, oh, we're going to make you dinner. Like,
Yeah,
what?
like, and you're at a table, and the table centerpiece is like fucking roadkill skulls, and then fucking Leatherface keeps like leaning in, looking at her like with those weird ass fucking black eyes. I'd be horrified.
Dude,
Absolutely.
the whole thing is a nightmare. So then Leatherface helps the hitchhiker carry Grandpa downstairs in his chair, and they all sit at the dining room table. Grandpa is the old, dead looking man that Sally found upstairs in the chase scene. Had to point that out. Leatherface and the hitchhiker cut Sally's finger with a knife and put her bleeding finger into Grandpa's mouth for him to drink the blood. This is the first sign of life we see from Grandpa, as he seems enthusiastic to be sucking blood out of Sally's finger. And of course, Sally passes out. Who wouldn't?
Right.
So I think this is my last page. Yeah, we're almost. This is my longest set of notes so far, but we're almost done. When Sally wakes up, she's still seated at the table and she's still tied to the chair, while Leatherface, the hitchhiker, the old man, and Grandpa are eating dinner. Sally begins to scream, and Leatherface and the hitchhiker basically like howl along with her, and they make noises and they laugh at her. They're basically taunting her. Sally begs the old man to not let them kill her, as Leatherface and the hitchhiker taunt her some more. The hitchhiker starts taunting the old man, and they kind of get into a bit of a fight themselves. I love Drayton's what's he call him? He calls him a bitch hog.
Yep.
I've been needing to start using that for years, and I never remember to, but I need to start calling people bitch hogs because that's such a
Yep. I think they used that in the second movie as well. Same term. I love the hitchhiker when he's going like he's taunting her. Like, bro, like not only are you fucking terrified that you're gonna die, you know these people have absolutely no remorse. And that whole scene is just fucking great. And they're all just and the POV of the camera, like you're looking through her eyes. And that's what you see is them just like cry, fake crying and fucking wild.
dude. Yeah, Leatherface is definitely like the least evil. Like the old man, he says he can't kill people. I kind of take that with a grain of salt. I guess we have to believe him, but he's a dick. He's the one that's tying people up and jabbing them with sticks.
Yeah.
The hitchhiker is out here fake crying and taunting people. Leatherface, the way he taunts, it's almost more of like a curiosity.
Yeah, because he's so like mentally fucked up, and we see that in the second Texas Chainsaw Massacre. We see that when he ties up Stretch, that girl, he like falls in love with her. He's actually got a soft side. He's just a product of his own environment, which is violence, gore, and fucking torture, and he doesn't know any better. And he wants to please his family, and in a weird way, this is pleasing his family. Like, you know,
Yeah, I think he's like the first. I mean, this is like the first slasher, anyways. But I think this is like one of the few movies or slasher villains where like, I think if he had if he had different circumstances, if he was born to a different family or something, like, I think he'd just be a good
right,
he'd still have his mental troubles, but I don't think he'd fucking kill and eat people,
right.
like
Knows why the mental problems are there. He could be an incest baby. He could be a product of incest. He could have been like a product of like an alcoholic mother, like who drank when she was pregnant with him. Like we don't really know. I don't think we ever really learned the backstory of him.
that is one thing I like about this movie, and of course, as franchises go on, they start trying to over-explain things, but yeah, we don't know anything about, like, I know it's the old man is a brother to the other they're all 3 brothers, but when the first time I saw it, I thought it was their dad.
Yeah, I thought the same thing.
Yeah, you never really know.
He says, "Go get grandpa." Like I could have been, father or brother. Yeah,
Yeah, like my mom, my mom calls when she's talking to like my little sister. She says, "Oh, go get dad," and she's talking about my sister's dad. That's how parents talk. But yeah, yeah, I guess they're all 3 brothers, which is interesting. Leatherface is funny. I like to think about the three characters like if it's a fighting game. So like with stats, like Leatherface is slow, but he's got a lot of strength stats, and then like the Hitchhiker is fast, but he's weak and kind of stupid. The old man is like smart, but he's slow and kind of weak. Like they all kind of form this perfect. You got the muscle, you got the speed, and then you got like the brains. Um, shit, where was I? Yeah, the Hitchhiker's taunting her. Yeah, the hitchhiker taunts the old man. He says that he doesn't do anything. He's just a cook. We do all the work around here. This is when the old man says, I can't take no joy in killing. Sally continues screaming. And here I wrote this part. We get this kind of trippy scene where Sally's just screaming and we're zooming in like kind of grossly close to her eyes. Like you can really see in her fucking eyes.
Yeah, you can see the red. You can see the red bloodshotness of it. And again, I don't know if that's her real eye color, but that is a fucking awesome use of like the green in her eyes is so terrifying. Like she's just, it's piercing green eyes with the red veins going through them. And it looks like it's better quality than it is. Somehow they pulled it off, dude. Like, that looked like a modern day camera when they zoomed in on her eyeball.
Yeah, it's a really cool scene. Yeah, grossly close on her eyes. And the family is still laughing at her and making noises. I had to write, most fans just refer to this as the dinner scene. Shit. Trick or Treat Studios, a really cool website. They just released for pre-order. I'm not going to get it yet. I'm going to try to hold off until I get paid. They put out they have like an action, I collect a lot of these fucking action figures because I'm a child. They just released a whole set that's the dinner scene. So it's like the table and the family.
That's sick.
Yeah, the family's at the chairs and Sally's on this end and Grandpa, and yeah, it looks really cool.
If you get that, you got to post a picture of it on your Instagram. I want to see what that looks like.
Oh, I 100% would. I got more that I need to post still that I just haven't yet. Yeah, so the dinner scene is what this is usually called. The family announces that they're gonna let Grandpa kill Sally, and the old man tells Sally about how Grandpa was the best killer at the slaughterhouse back in his prime. The hitchhiker grabs Sally and holds her head over a bucket, while Leatherface tries to hand Grandpa a hammer, but Grandpa is too weak to grasp the hammer. You ever seen that? It's a hilarious meme. You ever seen the episode of SpongeBob where Squidward is in the full body cast and they're trying to take him jellyfishing? And Patrick is like firmly grasp it and he tries to put the jellyfishing net in his hand.
Yeah.
People compare that to this scene of Patrick. Yeah,
there he is. That's like, yeah, he cannot grab it. Firmly grasp it. Yeah.
It's a great scene. I guess this whole scene is it's funny because we've talked about, of course, all these comparisons I keep making to House of a Thousand Corpses. How a lot of people consider House of a Thousand Corpses like a horror comedy. I guess Tobe Hooper, the director, considers this a comedy. Like he thought this whole dinner scene was hilarious.
It's funny, but it's definitely not hilarious. Like I seen like our video where we did the House of a Thousand Corpses review, and everyone's like, "Oh, I disagree. That's totally a comedy." Like I don't see it like that. Like I don't know. I guess it depends on like what kind of person you are. If you find humor and everything, which I do, but I still don't think this is. I'm putting myself in her fucking shoes, like, and they zoom in on Grandpa, and he's drooling, and he's like with his lips, like I mean, yeah, it's got some funny notes to it. I don't think that's funny. Like, I don't think anybody in the theater was laughing at that fucking scene.
That's what I think. The way you said it is kind of perfect. And I now I assume that me and you watch horror movies the same. When I watch horror movies, I try to watch it from the perspective of the victims.
Right.
So in Sally's eyes, that's terrifying. I think a lot of people watch these as movies, which is, they are movies and that's the healthy way to watch them. Maybe we're just weird about it. But yeah, if you're just watching it as a movie, I know that my mom is like that. If I was hanging out at my mom's house and I was watching this movie in the living room and the dinner scene was on and my mom just so happened to walk by, she would come back, she'd walk by and be like, what the hell are you watching? Like, and she'd laugh about it. But to me, I'm like, no, dude, this is like fucking terrifying. Like,
yeah, realistic. I think you do too. I just take it realistic. Like,
I just watch it straight that, Yeah, yeah, like you said, there's little bits of funny, like grandpa not being able to hold the hammer. Like, yeah, I get that. That's funny. But at the
Yeah,
same time, what's actually going on is there's family is trying to force this old man to fucking beat this woman over the head with a hammer. Like,
yeah. And I think also like just to step back to the dinner scene, another like thing that was kind of like fucked up to where it showed her like complete despair was when she goes, I'll do anything. I'll do anything. Like we know she's referring to sex. And they have no fucking interest whatsoever. Like, I don't know. It's just like a very like desperate scene. And yeah, you might give a little laugh here and there, but to say it's a fucking comedy, that's a little far fetched.
that is the darkest moment when Sally, who's a very pretty girl, is that's how I've always read it too. It is sexual. She's offering herself sexually
And
to Leatherface, dude. Like,
yeah.
yeah, that's like the darkest shit. And yeah, that is totally like to me like one of the most like I don't want to say like heartbreaking parts of the movie, but yeah, she's totally like this is her last resort. She's tried everything. She's tried begging. She's tried crying. It's not going to work. Like, imagine how much of a different movie though. You ever seen those memes where they'll post like it'll be like a funny picture of like Batman having sex with a woman, and then the caption will say like I think I rented the wrong Batman
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
In,
Yeah.
in in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, there's a version where Sally says, "I'll do anything you want," and Leatherface goes, "Okay, yeah," like, and then I think I rented the wrong Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie.
Yeah. Imagine having to have sex with those three fucking dudes. Oh my God, bro. And
That's
they
the worst OnlyFans video of all time.
somebody would probably still be into it. That's the problem with our world.
Somebody would pay $8.99 a month for that shit.
Yeah. Leatherface fuck Sally? Oh, deal.
Oh my god. Yeah, no, it's a set. That's one of like the saddest like little scenes, and she
Total.
realizes very quickly that it's not working. Like she kind of says it and she kind of forces that little smile and like sweet voice, and then pretty instantly is like, okay, fuck, they don't give a shit about
They
this.
don't that sex. They want to eat you.
Which is funny because in the next movie, Leatherface does care about sex.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's when Sawyer, the old man, he goes, what? He goes, what's this about sex? He goes, sex is, well, no one really knows for sure, but it's either sex or the saw. I love that line. Yeah, because Leatherface is putting the saw in between her legs. And it's like, you're right. It gets totally sexual there. So here, I don't know if he was just more immature or like that in the moment, they didn't give a shit. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's just they're just two different movies. Later on, they
Very, very,
thought,
he's very
yeah,
different.
later on they thought, well, let's humanize Leatherface a little bit, make him like girls. In my mind, I jokingly like to say that Sally just wasn't his type. He likes brunettes, so he goes for Stretch in the second one. I love the part though where you quoted it where Drayton says, "Well, sex, no one really knows." It's like, well, wait, no, we know what that is, Drayton. I think you just don't know what that is, and you're trying to cover up for it.
Dude, that's my favorite fucking scene in the second one. I know we're jumping all over, but like that sex is wow, because he's an old man. He's had sex, like he's been through whatever, but like he doesn't make it a big he's saying killing is more important than sex, which is insane.
Yeah, that second movie, it's a great movie.
It is. In its own right, it is.
All right, here we're like last paragraph. So, final or no, sorry. Grandpa is too weak to grasp the hammer, and after enough of a struggle, Sally escapes and jumps through another glass window. Not on the second story this time, first story, but still impressive as this is two glass windows in one movie. Finally, outside the house, it's now morning time, and Sally starts running as best as she can, considering all the injuries that she's picked up along the way. She's kind of hobbling along. And of course, we hear a chainsaw rev up. I love that how she's kind of running, and you don't see it. You just hear a chainsaw in the back. You're like, oh fuck, here we go. Um, yeah, we hear a chainsaw rev up in the background, and we start seeing the hitchhiker is running after her, and now Leatherface has come out the door, and he's chasing after Sally too. The hitchhiker is right behind her, swinging his knife at her back, so he's kind of just hacking away at her as they're running. They get to the middle. They get to a road nearby the house, and the hitchhiker finally grabs onto Sally's shirt, and he's just cutting the shit out of her back. And a semi truck approaches. Sally jumps out of the way. The hitchhiker gets completely run over by this big rig. Um, which I love this scene because it's he kind of just stands there and like is like just like but I buy it because of his mental state. Like if this was a normal person, I would say, well, you had like 10 seconds. Why didn't you jump out of the way, you fucking moron? But I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, this guy actually is a fucking moron. So he would just stand there and try to like, you know, like fight or flight or freeze. This guy obviously just froze.
Right.
The truck driver, who by the way deserves so much credit. This is like the real hero of this movie. The truck driver pulls over. He gets out to help Sally, who's covered in blood at this point. And when Leatherface catches up, Sally and the truck driver get into the cab of the truck on the driver's side. Leatherface runs up to the door and starts kind of running his chainsaw along the door. So the truck driver and Sally exit the truck on the passenger side, and we see the driver grab a wrench off the floor on the way out the door. And they start running away from Leatherface. And Leatherface now notices that they're running, so he starts chasing after them again. During this chase, the truck driver stops, turns around, and throws a fucking wrench right at Leatherface's head, causing him to fall and cut his own leg with his chainsaw. Leatherface stands up. He's now limping. He's chasing Sally again, and a random truck driver appears, and he happens to see what's going on. Which also, by the way, this is funny. While all this is going on, the semi truck driver just fucking bolt, like he's just gone. He has exited the movie
At that point.
And then, so yeah, a truck approaches the scene. He sees what's going on. He stops for Sally. It looks like she kind of hobbles into the bed of this guy's truck as Leatherface continues chasing her. But with Sally now in the bed of the truck, the man starts driving away. Sally has escaped. She is laughing hysterically in the bed of this truck as she looks back at Leatherface. And we get Leatherface's now iconic angry dance, is kind of what I call it. He looks to be clearly upset that Sally's gotten away, and he's kind of just dancing and throwing his chainsaw around maniacally.
One of the best scenes in any, not even just any horror movie, any fucking movie, period. The sun is coming up. He's now wearing a suit. He's wearing a business suit. It's obviously not his suit. It's somebody he killed. It's got the tie on, and that scene where he's spinning like this, and he's just got one hand swinging the dude. There's not any more iconic scene than that. It's just so fucking awesome. And her hysterical laughing is like realistic. And again, the piercing green eyes, the back of the truck, like, dude. After that movie, I was like a good horror movie, I'll shut it off and I'll just sit on my couch and look at the wall and be like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Moment.
I forgot to mention the wardrobe change. Yeah, he changed into that suit. It looks like he still got the woman's face on, but he's changed into a suit. Yeah, that movie, the way it ends, it just literally just cuts to black and goes silent. And it is, I sit there and I stare and the credits go by and it's just like, what the fuck? The first time I ever watched this, when that scene ended, I remember thinking, like, did the movie cut off? Because the first time I watched it illegally on my phone on some streaming site. And I was like, oh, the movie just cut off. And I'm like, no, that's how it ends. He's just dancing in the middle of the road, angry. And it just, you don't know anything. It's one of the best endings. Yeah, like you said, of all time. There's something that I forgot. Now that we're on ending notes, I want to go back. Joe Bob Briggs. I'm a big fan of Joe Bob Briggs. And he points this out. In the scene where the first chase scene where Sally jumps out the second story window of the glass window. One of the things that made Leatherface kind of special at the time was, this was so early on that in horror movies, generally when something like that happened, that would have been like the end of a chase scene, right? So in any I don't want to say cheesy, but in any of the older horror movies, if a character jumps out the second story window and runs off, the villain's going to look out the window and go, ah, dang, they got away. But Leatherface just lumbers down the stairs and starts fucking chasing. Like, there's no stopping him from chasing you until you get into a truck and he physically can't chase you anymore.
Right.
But yeah, no, he never gave up the chase.
Nope. Always there.
I forgot that most of the characters die. Not like early on, but there's kind of like two halves of the movie. There's the first half where the characters die, and then the second half is just Sally getting tortured and running. Like, half of it is just her running away from Leatherface, and it is like the best chases like ever. My one complaint, okay, since you mentioned this, I want to know if I'm being too picky or if you think this is if this makes sense. Um in the very last scene where Leatherface is angrily dancing in the middle of the road, you know, it's during sunrise time. But to me, it looks like a sunset.
Yep. I
Okay.
almost so when I just said that to you, I had to catch myself from saying when it was the sunset, it looks like a sunset. Uh yeah, totally looks like like the end of the day.
Sunsets are more orange, sunrises are more blue.
Yeah, exactly. And that had and that very well may have been a sunset and they
I
were just okay,
I
let's
think
just put it in.
I think it was. I think it was like the last day of shooting. They were like, you know, we got probably like it was probably one of those cases, you know, it's the fucking end of the day. This is our last day. We got 20 minutes until the sun goes down. We're not, you know, we're not we don't have enough money to shoot tomorrow, so we'll just do it right the fuck, you know, probably just budget reasons.
And it just, I mean, regardless, it came out fucking amazing. Like, I wonder how many takes that took because when he has one hand and he's basically windmilling the fucking chainsaw, and I don't know, man, it's fucking art. I think I told you I'm making a room like a computer streaming room, like where I can watch movies and do this shit, and I want to like get that like as a tapestry or a frame, like because I have all horror movie stuff up there, and that would be a cool like thing to frame and put up that scene.
It is it dude, it's so good. Imagine the balls on that cameraman to have to kind of, you know, he's really close. Like you're kind of shooting around this huge dancing Gunnar Hansen swinging a chains. Like I'd be like, dude, I'm standing 10 feet the fuck back. Like I'm not getting near this guy.
He's on top of him. It's almost like it was choreographed, but you know it wasn't. And he's just as he's actually I would compare it to like him like as a boxer, like moving away, like he's dodging them and moving and dude, fucking amazing. Yeah, I shut that off and I was like, it was one of the movies I was like, holy shit, that was fucking crazy. And I don't think we ever learn what happens to Sally though, right?
No, did you ever watch the God, the fucking one of the worst movies ever. The one that came the Texas Chainsaw Massacre that came out like in 2022.
I heard it was horrible, so I didn't watch it.
So Sally comes back in that movie.
Okay.
Obviously, Marilyn Burns was dead. They had some other actress play it. And they don't really explain what happened right after that movie, but and of course I don't consider that movie canon because I hated it. But what this movie tried to say was that Sally basically became a hard ass and joined like the Texas Rangers and lived her life like fighting crime and like on the hunt for Leatherface forever. Do you ever plan to watch it? Do you care if I spoil some shit?
I do not plan to watch it, so you could spoil it.
Good call. So it's the most, dude. It's so disrespectful to Sally. They literally kill her off in like 10 minutes. There's no point for her to be there. Leatherface literally chainsaws through her gut and throws her into a pile of trash. Like you know, when Halloween 2018 came out and they brought back Jamie Lee Curtis, that's when the whole like legacy thing started. Like they started, you know, Sydney, and I love Sydney Prescott. I love Scream. I was okay with Nev Campbell coming back, but it was like, dude, Marilyn Burns is dead. Like, let's not do this. Let's not bring someone else. There was no reason to bring her back for the story. The story would have been fine without her. It would have made more sense without her. She literally is in the movie for like 5-10 minutes, and she does nothing. She does all this really dumb shit. There's this one scene where like she has a chance to kill Leatherface and she literally just lets him like walk out of her room, and it's just dumb. She runs up to him with a shotgun at one point and she's I can't remember what she's like, "What's my name? Say my name." Like, dude, Leatherface is retarded. He doesn't know your name. He's not this isn't like, you know, like this isn't Michael and they tried to make it like Michael and Laurie. But Michael and Laurie are brother and sister. This is like a deeper Sally just so happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Leatherface has no emotional attachment to her. He's not been hunting for her for 30, you know what I mean? Like he's not.
Yeah, and Michael Myers was actually smart. Like he wasn't fucking retarded. He was just super fucking evil and like, yeah, he was mentally fucked up, but he wasn't stupid by no means.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Leatherface is by all means stupid. He's brute force and just stupid and childish.
some movies they should. I always say it. The classics will always hold up. Some classics should never be fucking touched. And like I work with these guys like they're like two of these guys that any new movie that'll come out, they'll watch it, and like I'm so opposite. They're like, oh, remake of this. I'm like, dude, it's gonna be trash. I'm telling you. And they're like, no, it's not. And they're always like, you're right, it's trash. Like I have such a hard time with new movies because they're always fucking horrible, and especially when it's a remake of a classic like that. Leave it the fuck alone. Let it die. I will say a remake that was actually, well, not a remake, but an adaptation that was really good was Doctor Sleep. I don't know if you've seen that.
I haven't yet. I own it on DVD, but now that you said that, I'll move it up on my priority list.
Huge, huge Shining fan, huge Stanley Kubrick fan, and I was like, oh, like what are you doing here? And they put a weird spin on it, but it was really good. It was really good.
One thing I heard about it, I watched a couple videos on it, even though I haven't seen it, because I've never cared too much about spoilers. I can still enjoy a movie even if the whole thing is spoiled. But one thing I really liked was the way that they brought back Dick Hallorann,
Yeah,
and in a way to balance it out between Stanley Kubrick and Stephen King's, they made him a ghost, and I thought that was genius. So I do think it sounds like I need to watch it.
and I will say one of the most fucked up scenes. I don't know. You said you don't mind spoiler alert, but
The child death, the child thing.
yeah, dude, where they're eating his soul, and they're all like fucking dope fiends over him, and so you must have seen that. You've seen that scene.
I've seen some, yeah, like I said, I've seen some videos on the movie.
Where they're like fucking fentanyl addicts like over this fucking kid. That's a crazy scene, dude. That is a crazy scene.
Remakes, it's funny. Texas Chainsaw, the 2003 one we said was pretty good. I've read somewhere, can't remember where, I've seen and read and heard so much shit. I can never remember where I hear shit. This wasn't like a particularly, like I can only find it in this one source that I think is just like a video. But someone said that, Rob Zombie was offered some kind of role in the production of the 2003 remake of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And apparently he said no, because the original, don't touch that fucking movie. It's perfect. Because, he's a huge fan of the original.
Yeah.
When we do Halloween next time, Rob Zombie's, I want to talk a little bit about, I don't think Rob Zombie likes remakes. I think he took the Halloween remake because he was trying to advance his career. It was a career move. It was his first mainstream movie. It's still his biggest movie to this day. I think if it was up to him, he wouldn't have done a remake, but he thought, well, I'm trying to break into Hollywood. This is my first big shot, so I have to take it. I also don't think I think he likes Halloween. I don't think he loves Halloween the same way that he loves like Frankenstein and Texas Chainsaw. I can get into that on the Halloween episode though, but yeah, remakes, they're hit or miss. Like I watch new horror movies just because I might go see that new Cuckoo movie tomorrow. I've read that it's kind of fucking stupid, but I try to keep up with like new stuff, but I do have a hard time. Like I'll go see a new movie, and even if I really like it, I'm like, okay, that's cool. But
Yeah.
9 times out of 10, when it's Saturday night and I'm at home and I'm putting on a movie, it's from the 70s or the 80s. Like the old ones, just something about them.
Yeah, that's it for me too. Like if I'll like be like, oh, I'm gonna go get like some beers and come home and drink, like I'll usually watch movies when I drink or listen to music or watch music videos. But if I decide to watch a movie, it'll be for the 100th time The Shining. It'll be Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It'll be fucking, American Psycho. And to note, American Psycho, when he's, you've seen that obviously, right? When he's doing his jumping jacks and his like sit ups, he's got the ending scene of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre playing. But yeah, anyway, like it'll always be the same movies. And that's funny because like if I'll hang with my friends, they'll be like, "We're watching this shit again." I'm like, "Yeah, we're watching this shit again because it's that fucking good."
Yeah.
I love movies to be like that. Like everybody I ever talked to, like you're the only person recently that is really into film the same way I am in the same genre. Like most people like are like, "All right, I've seen it once. Like I don't want to see it again." Like I could watch this shit over and over again. I love it.
Oh yeah. No, I sometimes have to break myself out of watching. Like, dude, I've got shelves full of DVDs and Blu-rays, and most of them I haven't watched. I plan to eventually, but dude, I'll watch like fucking. I love My Bloody Valentine from like 1981.
Yeah,
I think it's 1981. I
they did
remember. when
All
I
right.
when I first got that on Blu-ray, I watched it, I usually watch my movies over the weekends. I watched it for, like, 3 Saturdays in a row, and then was like, "Dude, I've got, like, hundreds of other movies I need to tell myself to watch other shit because 'cause I'll just
Right.
watch what I like."
You need. I brought it up earlier. I'm very surprised you didn't see the Hills Have Eyes remake. Holy fuck, dude! Speaking of remakes, that is fucking amazing. And there is a fucking rape scene. We talked about a rape scene before. This rape scene in that movie is one of the most fucked up rape scenes I've ever seen in my life. You got to watch it, dude. You've seen the original, right?
I've seen the original.
All right, you got to watch it, man. Like I mean, we don't necessarily have to do a review on it, but you need to watch it. Really
And no,
good.
eventually we should. Eventually we should do the original and the remake.
Yeah,
Eventually we should also do the original Halloween. As long as we're doing this shit, we'll have good ideas. Yeah, I do need to watch it. There was a good there's a good, a lot of people talk shit about like the whole early 2000s with all the remakes they were doing. But there was a couple good ones, like I liked the Rob Zombie Halloweens. You like the Hills Have Eyes. I never saw the My Bloody Valentine remake. I
that
really, I
was
really
it was. They did it in 3D. We were like stoned watching it. It was pretty wild. Anything 3D when you're stoned. They did also Last House on the Left remake. That was really good. Have you ever seen that?
I also haven't seen. I've seen the original, but not the remake.
Really good. Really good. Another fucked up rape scene. Rape scenes like bother me, like because I'm like this shit really goes down, and these poor women like got to deal with some fucking dirt bag on top of them, like gross the fuck out. Like they made them look realistic in those two movies. Like it bothered me watching it. I was like, fuck. Yeah,
Yeah, rape scenes in horror movies are funny. I mean, not funny, but funny in the way that like usually horror movies, they're full of murder. That's like the stakes of horror movies. And you watch a movie where like 20 people get murdered violently, but then once a rape scene happens, that's when you're like, "Oh, fuck."
yeah,
Technically, right, the stakes of rape versus murder, rape is I don't know why I'm holding a candle right now. Uh, I fidget with things when I talk. And I don't even necessarily want to say this completely because I do believe, if I was a girl, I'd probably rather be murdered than raped because rape you have to live with.
yeah,
But like technically on the scale of like, I don't want to say like sins, but murder is like the highest that you can get. That's the ultimate stake is life or death. So rape is on the scale, I think, slightly below it. When you see it in a movie, it's 10 times more effective than like a murder scene because
yeah.
it's just torturous.
Gritty and fucking gross. Yeah,
And if it's done wrong, you know, rape scenes in movies are, there's nothing like classy about rape in general, but if it's done wrong, it could just come off as trashy and like, oh, you're just trying to be vulgar for no reason. Like you have to do those things right.
right. Yeah, yeah. Those two movies, they fucking make it realistic as fuck. Like, yeah, and not much bothers me. I have a strong stomach. I could watch crazy shit. Like they used to put those ISIS beheading videos online. Like I'd be like, oh, it's crazy. But like for some reason that like, especially the last or the Hills Have Eyes one because it's like monsters raping a human girl and the fucking a dude. Yeah. So,
Dude, you know what? You know what that makes me think of? If we end up talking enough, I might do what I did with the Easy Rider and like cut this in half. You ever heard of the movie Humanoids from the Deep?
no.
Oh yeah, dude, 1980, Humanoids from the Deep, produced by Roger Corman. So you know it was gonna be trashy. It's literally about these like seaweed looking monsters come out of the deep ocean and they murder all the men in town and they rape all the women.
Oh shit.
That's all there is to it. And so it's one of those like monsters are raping the women, which is
Yeah. That's the same concept for sure.
yeah. Oh man. Yeah, those scenes have to be done right. It can it's just super heavy. Like if I was gonna make a movie tomorrow, that's why I think Rob Zombie is really ballsy for The Devil's Rejects, because that was only a second movie and he's like, let's go for the rape scene. Like to me, you have to be like an experience to pull that off. But like I would be too afraid to put a rape scene in my movie, but no, this guy was like, dude, 2 movies in, let's fucking do it. Like,
It was like he was on top of his game there. Like you said, he matured in such a short amount of time as a director. I mean, he also pushed the limit in his music too. Like no one saw like anything like White Zombie before. Like music, like fucking Thunder Kiss 65. When you see that music video, you're like, what the fuck is this? And I love it. He says it best though. He's like, everything's a ripoff of like Alice Cooper, but like in their own way, like shock rock, like that kind of shit. But he really did kind of make it his own thing. So I'm not surprised he did that with his films too.
yeah, that music video, that reminds me of I finally just watched Faster Pussycat Kill Kill.
Yeah.
Which is, have you ever seen that?
Yeah.
It's pretty, I mean, that's like the whole the first popular White Zombie album, Last Exorcista. That's like that whole, I jokingly call that album Faster Pussycat Kill Kill the album, because the whole like the imagery is like from that movie. Like all the quotes are in Thunder Kiss.
Yeah.
So I think I mentioned that last time that I like that he kind of puts his influences, also like Quentin Tarantino, to the point where people accuse them of like ripping stuff off, and it's like, no, they're just showing this respect to their influences. That's the way it's supposed to be done. But yeah, shit. A lot of people talk about they wish they could have seen Rob Zombie Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which I think obviously undeniably that would have been cool, but I do respect his his like love for the original, that he's just like, no, I'm not going to touch it.
He could have did it as a trial and error thing, because I would have loved to have watched that. Like, just like, yeah, like I'm contradicting what I'm saying here. Yeah, original shouldn't be touched, but when it comes to somebody as unique as him and his filmmaking, it would have been cool to kind of like watch it just like on the DL and been like, all right, what would he have done with it?
Yeah. The one thing that all of the other movies, part 2 gets it down, except for the fact that they add the fact that Leatherface likes girls. All the other movies, they all get Leatherface wrong. So even like the 2003 remake and that 2006 prequel to the remake, which I also really like, they get Leatherface totally wrong. In the original, Leatherface is, 1, he's retarded. 2, he's kind of innocent. He's not really an evil guy. All the other movies make him like kind of like a Jason Voorhees. Like he becomes even bigger. He's like evil. Like in the 2003 remake, he's like really mean and like gruesome. He's really not that. He's not mean in the original. He's not mean. I mean, he cowers when the old man gets home. He like cowers down and tries to hide from him. All the other movies, yeah, they make him really mean, and it's I would imagine that's honestly just because of the social climate. A lot of directors probably don't want to fuck around with trying to portray a guy with like the kind of mental disabilities that Leatherface clearly had. The same reason nobody will make a movie with a wee guy in a wheelchair and call him invalid anymore. So I get it, but I still would like to see if anyone ever is going to make another Texas Chainsaw movie, I would like to see them try to actually do the real Leatherface. Like, give us this guy who's not actually evil. He's not a big hulking evil giant. He's just like kind of a misunderstood guy that's like suffering from abuse by his family, because that's what he is. He's like an abuse victim, and he's just doing what he was taught how to do.
Yeah, they definitely went the other way. Like, I didn't even think about that till you said it. The remake with Jessica Biel, when he looks fucking pissed off, like he knows what he's doing. Like, even his mask was more fucked up. His eyes had the flare to him. Like, they strayed so far away from the original. And like you said, it was the social climate. Like, people want to see angry fucking, mad killer. They don't want to see, I don't know why, but they don't want to see, the sweet fucked up dude that was, when he's like, oh, hitting his head and shit. Did you ever see, they put him in like Mortal Kombat. Did you ever see that?
Yeah, that was awesome. I thought it was a great idea. They should do more, whenever they do more Mortal Kombats. I think did they do Jason in Mortal Kombat at one point, or just Leatherface?
I'm not sure. I think they might have, yeah, I think they did Jason too. But they did they did retarded Leatherface, which is cool.
Yeah.
And they did the total original get up from the first movie. And like in one of his like special moves, if he misses and he fucks up, he starts hitting himself in the head. Like, you know, like it's pretty cool. We should definitely sometime do a review of the second one. The second one's really good in its own right. Totally different vibe, very 80s, corny, but like the lighting and the imagery of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 actually reminds me of the lighting and imagery in like Eyes Wide Shut with like the Christmas lights and stuff. Has that total vibe to it. But yeah, we should definitely do that. And the chick who plays Stretch is hot as hell too. I follow her on Instagram. I forget her name.
I got myself into a few Twitter conversations. What's her name? Caroline Williams.
Yeah.
Yeah, she talks politics on Twitter sometimes, and she's really cool. She's very she's not one side or the other. She doesn't understand the tribalism. That's what we talked about. She's like, I don't understand all this like blind tribalism to one party. Like she's like, use your, we were talking about how she's like, yeah, I observe with my fucking eyes, and then I think with my brain, and I decide which side is. She's really cool. She is very cool. So yeah, no, I like her a lot. It's funny, when I first saw that movie, we do have to do Texas Chainsaw too. To touch on it though, when I first watched it, I didn't like it, and it's because I was wanting it to be like the first one. I think the story is that Tobe Hooper didn't necessarily want to do it. He had a 3-movie deal with Canon Films. And I think the somebody else was going to do it. I think was the story. Somebody else was going to do the sequel, because usually directors they're like that. They don't want to keep doing sequels to their movies. Like they always want to move the fuck on to the next thing. But something came up, and Tobe Hooper was like, "Yeah, fuck it, I'll do it. But if I'm going to do it, it's going to be a comedy." Like he really wanted to make a funny movie. He wanted the Texas. This story always kind of pisses me off when people tell it, because they leave out the context that there was no PG-13 at the time. When Tobe Hooper made the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the first one, he expected it to be rated PG. That's why there's not a lot of blood in it.
Seen that.
But people will say that as if he's stupid. But it's like, dude, you're leaving out the context that there was no PG-13 at the time. So if it's not rated R, it's going to be rated PG. But yeah, so that's how funny, that's how comical he thought, which is funny because think about how twisted that guy's sense of humor is, that he's like, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, rated PG.
Yeah. Imagine a little kid going in to watch that.
Yeah. So then he makes 2, and he's like, okay, but I'm going to lean into the comedy with this one, which he did. It is very good. I love the opening scene of the kids on the freeway, and that whole car scene where they're driving backwards on the bridge. And yeah, it's a really interesting choice to just go full on comedy with it. I liked the final scene, the chainsaw battle, like the chainsaw sword fight, basically.
Fucking Dennis Hopper, like that's a cool choice for an actor.
It's hilarious to me to think that this guy goes from Easy Rider to Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2.
That's how broad of an actor he was. That's what's so fucking cool about it. I love when he's like, he calls Stretch sister. He breaks into the fucking ground and he sees her. He's like, whatever his name was, and he's like, sister. He's just like corny as hell. Pretty good though. It is funny.
Yeah, and that movie was really gory. They had Tom Savini on a special effects, so it got really bloody.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I was gonna say that you finally see Leatherface cut a guy's face off for the first time.
Yeah. I also love oh my god, the guy that plays Jim Sedal, the guy that plays the fuck was his character's name? I just lost.
Drayton.
Yeah, Drayton. He's so much funnier and cornier in that, like, because when he wins the barbecue thing and he's like, this town loves grade A meat. Everyone's just like, and he's like, I love a town that can appreciate good meat. Like he just keeps saying it. Like in the end, when he takes the fucking grenade and he's like, a man tries to make a business and it gets shoved up his ass. He pulls the thing. Like he's definitely funnier in that. We definitely got to do that. That's shit.
I love that they had him a fucking like award-winning chili cook. It's so genius. There's
got the cup and it's full of chili and it's just spilling over and the fucking.
There's a one of the documentaries that helped get me into horror is this documentary called In Search of Darkness. Um, one of the it's a three series documentary, incredible documentaries. It's all about horror in the 80s, so it's all about just all the 80s horror movies. And there's a little section where they talk about movies that people like came up with the idea for but never really got going or got made. So I guess after Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, Bill Moseley came up with a little idea for a third Texas Chainsaw movie. And he wanted to move the family to New York. And he thought it would be funny. So like during the daytime, Leatherface's job would be like cleaning up the sewers and like underground. But then at nighttime, he would go out and kill the homeless people, and he would take their meat, bring the meat back to Drayton, and Drayton would cook it up. He would have a restaurant somewhere in New York where he serves his chili. And then he had the idea of Leatherface Mary Stretch from Texas Chainsaw 2. You know, Bill Moseley, I think Bill Moseley loves that horror comedy shit. I think he loves the funny stuff.
Yeah, because his parts are kind of funny. It was actually his birthday the other day. I was just reading. And ironically enough, we're talking about Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And one day ago on my news thing, it says creatives recount making the Texas Chainsaw Massacre on its 50th anniversary. So pretty funny. We're talking about that, and it was just on there.
Yeah, it's just the first two are just great. It's funny how the franchise as a whole sucks. Like after the second one, it goes downhill from there. The remake is fine. You know, I like the remake. The 2006 is good. Have you ever seen any of the ones after that? Like, have you seen what's it called? There's one that's just called Leatherface. And then there's one that's called Texas Chainsaw 3D. I think that's the one with Alexandria Diodaro or whatever.
No, I've never seen them. The only reason is because, like, I don't normally take people's opinions and, like, oh, I'm not going to see it. But if, like, the majority says it's fucking horrible, I'm not going to watch it.
Yeah, they were terrible. The only reason to watch Texas Chainsaw 3D is because there's a scene where Alexandria Daddario, her shirt kind of rips open and her cleavage is awesome. That is the whole reason to see that movie.
I'll just fast forward it to that part.
I'm pretty sure you could just look it up. There's a really tacky scene because in that movie, she's Leatherface's cousin. And there's a scene where right before that, or right after you pretty much see her tits, she throws the chainsaw to Leatherface and she says, do your thing, cuz. Like, people make fun of that shit. So if you look up Do Your Thing, Cuz on YouTube, Texas Chainsaw, you'll find it and you'll see the cleavage. And that's all you need to know about that movie.
Well, you saved me some time then.
Yeah. And then they tried to make the Leatherface. It's like supposed to be like a prequel to the original where it's like teenage Leatherface. He's like
that I've seen previews of it and nah.
It's bad. It's Lionsgate. So you could tell they were trying to do like the Devil's Rejects. It's a road movie. And it's terrible. What's funny is that it would have been a perfectly fine movie if they didn't try to squeeze the Texas Chainsaw. Like if it wasn't Leatherface, if it was just a standalone movie about a kid in a mental institution, it's kind of a fine movie. But right. You know, these companies try to squeeze in all the remake and try to squeeze in all the old stuff into it to make people want to go see it.
This is far left field, totally not on topic, but have you seen Joker?
Yeah, I love Joker.
Great movie. I am not into superhero movies.
Me either.
Like dark shit like that. That was fucking great. I'm excited to see the second one coming out. I hate Lady Gaga. I can't stand her, but I feel like she may have did a good job playing in that role.
I love pop music, so I liked her, you know, when she first came out, like Poker Face and all, I liked that stuff, but as an actor, you know, whatever. Yeah, I'm totally tired of the only superhero movies I really like are like the original Spider-Man from Sam Raimi back in the early 2000s. You know, Tobey Maguire is my Peter Parker.
Is that what Willem Dafoe as the Green Goblin? That was a good one.
Yeah, it's great.
I love Willem Dafoe as an actor. I think he's so good.
Oh, he couldn't do anything else. He's got such a unique face. He has to be an actor. Yeah. In American Psycho, when we talk about that, I love Willem Dafoe. he kind of walks the line between like you kind of trust him, but you kind of don't trust him. You don't. He's a good guy, but he kind of looks like he's got bad intentions. He looks like a nice guy. He looks like an evil guy. His face is very made for acting.
When he interviews Patrick Bateman for the first time, he fucking plays him. He mind fucks him so hard. When he comes in and he's like, I didn't interrupt anything important, did I? And he sees him push the fucking tape set into his desk. He knows the guy's doing nothing. And then he's like, you know, to think that one of his friends would kill him for no reason at all is just too crazy to think. Like he's fucking toying with a psycho, and he just does it so well, man. Fuck.
Well, again, like we keep saying, we'll have to do it and we'll get into it, but just because it's so cool. I know that some of the story of the behind the scenes is that the director, basically every scene, it sounds like with Willem Dafoe, they did like 2 or 3 takes. And for the first take, she would say, okay, play this part as if your character thinks that Patrick Bateman is guilty. So then they would shoot it. Then the next take, they would do the take again, and she would say, okay, play this part as if your character thinks that Patrick Bateman is innocent. He's not guilty. And then so throughout the movie, she uses like you'll get one take in this scene and then the next. So he goes back and forth between acting like he thinks he's guilty and then he thinks he's innocent. So he's friendly to him, then he's not friendly to him. Then so it's this constant kind of mindfuck to the audience too.
Amazing. Amazing. If you like Willem Dafoe, you really need to see The Lighthouse. It's not that old.
Yeah, I have not seen that movie, and I've always wanted to. I've been curious.
That is a work of art, dude. Robert Eggers is the director, same guy that did The Witch. If you've never seen that, that's great too. It's filmed in black and white. It's about these 2 guys that are lighthouse keepers, but you know, back in the day, a lot of these lighthouses were like 30 miles offshore. And they were like, listen, you know, we're putting you 2 guys here. You have 4 months worth of food. We're going to come pick you up at this time on this date. If you don't come outside and you don't come here, we're leaving and we won't be back for another 3 months. And they fucking get drunk and miss the fucking boat and they start going crazy and hallucinations and fucking, there's a weird, like, they're 2 like straight men and then they get wasted and like they almost like fucking try to hook up with each other. Is fucking crazy, dude. That's one of my top 10. You really should watch that. That's a good one to do a review on because there's so many what the fuck scenes. Not to give away too much, but Willem Dafoe, you know, he's been a lighthouse keeper forever, and he like almost like has like sex with the light in the lighthouse. I know that doesn't make sense, but like the one dude goes up to like see what he's doing, and he's like cum dripping from the fucking light upstairs, and he's like, "Is this motherfucker jerking off to the light?" And he is. It's like the power of the light draws him in. It's really fucking sick and twisted. Really good.
Yeah, I gotta check this out. I'm curious now. I've been curious. You know, I've heard a lot about this movie. I just haven't.
It'd be right up your alley. You'd be like, what the fuck, dude? Like it was one of those movies where it stopped and I was like, holy shit.
It makes me think of I keep going way off. I'll mention this and then we'll start closing. It makes me think of, there's this movie called Ennis, Maine, that I really love. It's Ennis, Maine. It's spelled ENYS space and then MEN, but the MEN is pronounced Maine. It's Cornish. It's basically about it's like the most artsy fartsy independent film you could ever imagine. It's shot on let me look it up. It's about this girl who is or a woman. She's kind of an older lady. She volunteers to work on an island that is, let me see. Yeah, set in 1973 on an uninhabited island off the Cornish coast. A wildlife volunteer, her daily observations of a rare flower turn into a metaphysical journey that forces her, as well as the viewer, to question what is real and what is a nightmare. Basically, she's just like a wildlife volunteer. She's observing this rare flower on this like small deserted island, and hallucinations and shit starts happening. And this movie gets so trippy to the point that the scenes are like out of order. So like one scene, there's only like 3 characters in this whole movie, but one scene you'll see a character die, and then the next scene you're like talking to this character. It's so you're like, what the fuck? I thought that person just died. It's a really pretty movie though. It's definitely one of my favorite little kind of like what the fuck movies. Like and so it makes me think of two people abandoned on a lighthouse. They start hallucinating and kind of a similar. Yeah, I like those artsy fartsy movies. Those are rare. I almost think to bring it back to our main topic, I almost think the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original, is kind of an artsy fartsy, like it's just a bunch of college kids ran out to the middle of the back roads and made a shitty little movie that's kind of artistic in a way. I've always been very curious about, Tobe Hooper before this made a movie called Eggshells. And I guess Eggshells is like a straight up fucking hippie, like psychedelic movie that nobody liked. In 1969. Sounds really interesting. Horror drama, it says.
I'll have to check that out. You know what you should do is we should make a list for each other of shit we haven't seen.
Yeah.
Watch it. The problem with me is my fucking work schedule. It's hard for me to fit shit in. Well, I guess on my days off I could do it, but here it is. Wait, no, not actually a fucking eggshell Wikipedia. Like, what the fuck? That's funny. Eggshell movie.
Yeah, 1969, independent experimental film. It's the only movie Tobe Hooper made before Texas Chainsaw.
That's a trippy fucking movie poster. I don't know if you see that.
Yeah. Yeah, it looks like one of those movies that, kind of like I was talking about at the beginning. I like going into movies. I have no idea what happens in the movie. All I know is the reputation of it.
Funny, he's like, cast Ron Barnhart as Ron, Amy Lester as Amy, fucking Pamela Craig as Pam. Like, he didn't even get creative with the names. He just used their actual names as the character.
Yeah, I like Kim Hinkle in it, though. He's one of the guys that wrote Texas Chainsaw, so they must have been partners for a while.
Right. Right on, brother.
Yeah, fucking A. Well, yeah, shit, hell yeah. I like these. I can tell when you don't have work the next day because we end up rolling for like 2+ hours.
I wish it could be like this all the time. It just sucks because I don't want to wait. I don't want to wait 2 weeks and to do another, like, to do one of these. So I suffer the one day. But
well, if you ever want to not do one, like, let me know. I'll do it. But like, if you want to take like whenever off, I really don't mind. Like, but when you do, let me know if you want me to hold off or just do it without you. So like next week would be Rob Zombie's Halloween. If you're tired, you don't want to do it, you can, I'll do it by myself, or you can say, don't do it, take the night off. I'm glad that Silence of the Lambs will fall on a day you have off, right?
Fucking pumped for that, dude.
Yeah.
I love that movie so much. Like, I can recite scenes from that movie. Like, it makes me look like a fucking serial killer, like verbatim. And people are like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like, so yeah, I'll definitely let you know. But it's not too bad if we start at the time we did. And like, we went longer today, but as long as I could get to bed by like 10:30, 11, I should be fine. It's because you're on that fucking California time, the right time,
the proper time.
But yeah, man, no, this was a good one. I had fun. I appreciate you having me on again. And yeah, I guess next time I'll see you, it'll be Wednesday. I really want to talk about that fucking Apple River thing. I brought it up to Annie too. That guy that's fucking nuts. So
yeah, I'm excited to talk about that. I'm gonna send you the video that I talked about, the YouTuber that I watched. I'll send you that just because it's interesting. He does a very interesting, kind of the way I feel about it. He goes back and forth a lot. The debate is self-defense, not all that stuff. He does it really well.
Right.
But yeah, fucking A. Well, shit. Like I said, we'll end up talking before Wednesday anyways, but at the latest, we'll be back on here on Wednesday.
Oh yeah, bro.
Right on. Well, I'm going to click you off and then I'm going to rant for a second.
All right, man. Have a good one.
You too, man. Right on. Hell yeah. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, 1974. I might cut this video in half. I might not. Our schedule coming up next week, next Saturday, is Rob Zombie's Halloween. That'll be cool. I have a little bit to say about that one. That's going to get more into like my thoughts on like the behind the scenes stuff that was going on, like in Rob Zombie's career. The Saturday after that will be Silence of the Lambs. That one's gonna be cool. I think Annie's gonna come on for that one if she's like around. Like I think she said she wanted to come on for it, so hopefully she's free and able to make it. That one's gonna be a Mark episode. He's gonna do the story for that one because that's he I think he said that's his favorite horror movie. That's right up his alley, so that'll be cool. That one I'm excited for because I'm not the biggest fan of Silence of the Lambs. So it'd be cool to finally do a movie where we both have kind of like different opinions on it, you know. I don't expect that we're gonna be like fucking fighting back and forth, you know. I don't think that's gonna be the case. But it'll be cool to do like oh, I did like this, and oh, I didn't like this, and here's why, and here's why. I know Mark has said that he doesn't really like Lords of Salem by Rob Zombie. And I don't like 31. And he says he does like 31. So those will also be interesting to, you know, that's what I like to talk about with people is stuff that I like and they don't like, or stuff that they don't like, or no, stuff that they like and I don't like. You know what I'm saying? So that'll be fun. And then after Silence of the Lambs, it'll be Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, which I have a whole lot to say about. And then after that, we have to figure out what we're gonna do next. You know, I feel like we usually pick something pretty fucking last minute. Like we'll just talk about it the week before. But yeah, fucking A. I'm gonna get out of here. I have nothing to do, but I'm gonna act like I have some shit to do. I might work on I kind of want to do a video on the original Frankenstein by myself. So that might be what I'm doing tonight. So again, anyone who stumbles across this later on, thanks for clicking on to it. I could certainly use the view, so I appreciate it.